Chapter 1243. Shang Yusun's first reaction was to set up a barrier around himself. The terrifying power of the explosion was completely blocked outside. Even so, the Tianlei was right above his head. The distance was extremely close, and it was impossible to completely avoid it. That shocking aura rushed over, causing his chest to feel stuffy, and he almost knelt on the ground. However, he still forced himself to stand and quickly looked up. At this moment, he finally saw clearly what had happened. The heavenly lightning that was supposed to descend had been completely intercepted by a sword that had appeared out of nowhere. Silver light flickered on it, and sparks flew everywhere. Bang! The sound of something exploding was heard. Shang Yusun looked down and saw that the yuan instrument that he had painstakingly forged had cracked because the Tianlei's tempering had been interrupted and the change in temperature was too great. Shang Yusun raised his eyebrows and threw the item on the ground. He couldn't help but shout. Who the F***ck did this? His shout was like thunder, instantly reverberating throughout the myriad wine mountain. Chu Luiyue paused and felt a little guilty. She had originally planned to bring Scarlet Heaven's sword here and wait for the Tianlei in the spring to gather again before putting it in for tempering. Who knew that things would develop like this? At this moment, Shang Yusun also noticed Chu Luiyue's existence and looked over with his sharp eyes. Who? Come out. As he shouted, he angrily rushed over, intending to arrest her. Seeing that the other party was rushing down, Chu Luiyue knew that she couldn't hide, so she quickly stood out. Student Chu Yu greets elder. Only then did Shang Yusun see the person in front of him clearly. This was a youth who looked no more than 16 or 17 years old. His figure was thin and slender, and his face was delicate and clean. His face was a little pale, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that he had just been through trouble. Shang Yusun shouted angrily. At this time, all students in the academy are forbidden from stepping into Myriad Wine Mountain. Don't you know? Chu Luiyue thought that of course she knew, and this was not the first time she had committed a crime. She raised her eyes slightly and looked over the shoulder of the middle-aged man in front of her. In the air, Scarlet Heaven's sword was continuously swallowing the Tianlei that was falling from the sky. Moreover, there were quite a few of them in Tianlei, which showed that this person was not weak. She was slightly relieved and bowed to admit her mistake. Elder is right. I didn't do it on purpose. It was just a moment of desperation that I accidentally barged in. Don't tell me these useless things. When Shang Yusun thought of the incomplete divine artifact that he had destroyed, he couldn't help but feel angry. He had been in Lingxiao College for so many years, but this had never happened before. A student. He had actually barged into the Thousand Wine Mountain just like that, even interrupting his refining process and intercepting his Tianlei. He must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's gall. I think you're going against the heavens. You. Immediately put away that broken thing of yours. Then, ask your master to come over and apologize to me personally. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment and felt a little troubled. Scarlet Heaven's sword had rushed out by itself just now. It would not be that easy for her to put it away now. Besides, she had come for the Tianlei of the Thousand Wine Mountain. It was not easy for her to find it, so how could she just leave like that? As for asking her master to come over, she wondered what Elder Wan Zhang's expression would be if he heard this news. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment, then revealed an apologetic and earnest smile. Elder, what happened today was really purely an accident. I know that I was wrong and the consequences are serious. There is no reason for me to escape punishment no matter what. But, can you please wait for a while? Shang Yusun raised his eyebrows and glared at her. Wait? Wait for what? Chu Luiyue paused for a moment, then stretched out a finger and pointed upwards. She lowered her voice and said, just wait for me to finish refining the yuan instrument. Shang Yusun was so angry that he almost laughed. He had never seen a student like this before. Not only did she make a mistake, but she also took advantage of him. She was about to die, but she still had the nerve to ask for conditions. Ha! He sized up Chu Lua again. All right. Kid, you're young, but you've got guts. What kind of treasure is that yuan instrument of yours? You even dared to snatch the Tianlei that I triggered. Suddenly, his voice stopped abruptly, and the way he stared at Chu Lua changed. Chu Lua felt inexplicably guilty and could not help but ask. Elder, why are you looking at me like that? Shang Yusen narrowed his eyes. What did you say your name was? Chu Lua answered honestly. Chu Yu. It's really you. Shang Yusen's mouth twitched. He was too agitated just now, so he did not hear or pay attention to Chu Liuyue's self-introduction. It was only after taking a closer look that he felt a little familiar. Chu Yu. Wasn't that the kid he and Bo Yen were talking about during the day? Chu Luyue blinked. The elders of Lingxiao College basically knew her by now. But this seemed to be the first time they met. And she also felt that this face was a little unfamiliar, as if she had never seen it before. If I remember correctly, you were locked up in Mount Pengmin for trespassing on Mount Wanjiao, right? How long has it been since you came out? As Shang Yusen spoke, he suddenly thought of something and turned around abruptly. Wait. That thing, is that the divine artifact that I took back from Blue Feather's abyss? The item that Chu Yu brought with him, which was powerful enough to intercept his Tianlei, seemed to be that. Cough, elder is wise. Chu Lua smiled awkwardly and said very honestly and uneasily, I'm sorry. I really don't have any other intentions this time. I just want to borrow a few Tianlei. Digression. Dear friends of the September list, please join the group as soon as possible for verification. The list will be updated on the 7th. After the comments section is opened, it will also be pinned. In addition, from today until the morning of the 13th, there will be a super huge event in the comments section. For details, please see pinned. Other readers other than Xiaoxiang can also participate in the event. Thank you Big Pair mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1244. Shang Yusen thought that he was hallucinating. What did you say? He gritted his teeth and asked word by word. Every word seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps between his teeth, with a hint of gnashing teeth. Chu Lua shrank her neck. There was nothing she could do. She had snatched his things, so she felt guilty. But there was really nothing she could do about this. Who knew that he was refining here? Besides, after she came here, she didn't do anything, and Scarlet Heaven's sword ran out on its own. It wasn't all her fault. However, she didn't dare to say such words of justification again. And it seemed that it was useless to say it. She lowered her head. This student knows her mistake. This sincere appearance of admitting her mistake made Shang Yusen unable to vent his anger. Humph. You're quite promising. Borrow, Tianlei. To think that you can say that. Shang Yusen flicked his sleeve and looked back at the top of the mountain. In the Tianlei that was constantly hacking down, a long sword could be vaguely seen. That Scarlet Heaven sword? He narrowed his eyes and asked. Chu Luyue was a little surprised that he actually recognized the sword, but on second thought, after all, he was an elder of the academy, so it wasn't strange for him to know this. After all, this was a divine artifact refined by the academy's ancestors, and that notebook had always been kept in the academy. Yes. You got lucky, kid. Shang Yusen snorted. He had been thinking about this thing for so many years, but he never got to see it. Who would have thought that he would miss it during a short period of seclusion? The key was that Scarlet Heaven's sword had recognized a master. A venerable divine artifact recognizing a master. It wasn't that simple. He didn't know how this kid did it. Chu Luyue lowered her head even more. This student is guilty. She vaguely sensed that this elder's attitude toward Scarlet Heaven's sword seemed to be a little different from the other elders. Elder Bo Yen, and even Elder Shu Feng, who had personally gone to snatch Scarlet Heaven's sword back then, didn't seem to know so much about Scarlet Heaven's sword. Is it tempering its soul? Shang Yusin's next word surprised Chu Luiyue. But on second thought, the other party was a blacksmith in the first place, and his rank wasn't too low either. It wasn't too surprising that he would be able to see through it with a single glance. Elder's insight is truly admirable. Humph, you don't have to flatter me. To be honest, I am much more familiar with this Scarlet Heaven sword than you are. Unfortunately, he was not fated to do so. Since the venerable artifact could recognize a new owner, it meant that there was no artifact soul inside. Thinking back to what Bo Yen had told him before, he could more or less guess what was going on. The sword's soul had been transferred to the venerable divine artifact that lacked an artifact soul, forcing it to recognize him as its master. Such a situation was 1 in a million, but it really happened. This really made it impossible for anyone to be jealous. Why are you still standing here? Why aren't you going up? Shang Yusin shot a disdainful glance at Chu Luiyue. Don't tell me you can't even do this? Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment before he realized that he was urging him. Didn't he want to teach him a lesson just a moment ago? Why did he suddenly seem so supportive now? Elder, you don't mind? Chu Luiyue asked tentatively. Why are you being so wishy-washy? If I mind, didn't you already take Tianlei away? Shang Yusin simply wanted to take action. This kid looked quite smart, but why was he so stupid at the critical moment? The Yuan instrument that he wanted to refine was already damaged and could not be salvaged. There was no use in regretting it. On the other hand, the Scarlet Heaven sword was at an extremely important juncture. If any problems occur during the process of refining the artifact soul, it could lead to failure. Why aren't you going? Are you going to watch such a treasure be destroyed? Shang Yusin finally could not hold back. He grabbed Chu Luiyue's shoulder and pushed him hard. Hurry up and go. Chu Luiyue did not hesitate anymore. Thank you, Elder. With that, he tapped his toes and quickly flew toward the top of the mountain. Shang Yusin raised his head to take a look. The number of Tianlei in the sky was decreasing. Those were all summoned when he wanted to refine the artifact. The process was interrupted, so the rest naturally did not appear. The previous ones were consumed extremely quickly. At this time, only half of them were left. However, until now, there was still no big movement on the Scarlet Heaven sword. This also meant that there was still a long way to go before it could refine the artifact soul. Shang Yusin looked for a while and could not help but snort coldly. I still have to do it. Troublesome. With that, he stomped heavily on the ground and soared into the sky. Chu Luiyue rushed to the top of the mountain. The Scarlet Heaven sword was floating in midair. Nearly 2/3 of the golden patterns on the scabbard had already appeared. However, the aura around the sword seemed to have become much more chaotic, and there was a faint tendency for it to go berserk. Girl, you must hold this sword well. If you don't control it well, the artifact soul might be unable to suppress it and cause the entire process to fail. Although Taizu's voice was weak, it was exceptionally serious. Although this was not refining artifacts, it was extremely difficult to refine the artifact soul of a venerable artifact. Chu Luiyue nodded. I know. She held her breath and stepped forward. Passing through the countless flashing lightning, she held the Scarlet Heaven sword in her hand again. Then, she continued to pour her force into it. The effect was immediate. Soon, the violent aura around the Scarlet Heaven sword calmed down again. That familiar and subtle feeling of connection was gradually increasing. All of a sudden, Tuanzi ran out of her body and plunged into the spring below. Splash! Chu Luiyue looked down. Ripples appeared on the calm water surface, but she could still see countless Tianlei swimming crazily in it. Boom! Another loud sound was heard. Chu Luiyue was shocked and quickly looked up. She saw that several Tianlei had appeared in the sky that had gradually calmed down. Between heaven and earth, wind and thunder rumbled. A figure stood in the air. It was Shang Yusin. His clothes fluttered and his sleeves waved. The aura around him surged crazily, and his might was impressive. As he did this, more and more Tianlei appeared in the sky. Chu Liyue instantly understood. He was helping her to trigger the Tianlei. Chu Liyue's heart was filled with gratitude. Thank you, Elder. Shang Yusen did not even turn his head and shouted, What are you thanking me for? Focus on refining the artifact soul. If you fail, I'll teach you a lesson. He had spent so much effort to help, and he would not allow failure. Chu Liyue could not help but smile. Without saying anything else, she retracted her gaze and focused all her attention on the Scarlet Heaven sword. Finally, the scabbard loosened a little. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat, and she gripped the hilt tightly. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1245. At this time, the entire top of Thousand Wine Mountain was enveloped by a dazzling silver Tianlei. Amidst the rumbling of the flames, it was almost impossible to see the situation inside. One could only vaguely see Shang Yusen floating in the air. As for the place where the heavenly lightning gathered, only a slender figure could be vaguely seen. Seeing this scene, Rong Xiu stopped not far away. He had originally planned to help, but since someone had made a move first, he would just wait and see. It seemed that everything was going smoothly, however, this harmonious scene was quickly broken. Because someone else had come. Elder Ouyang had heard that Shang Yusen had come out of seclusion and was planning to refine weapons at Thousand Wine Mountain at night, so he wanted to come and take a look. However, as soon as he stepped into the barrier, he realized that something was wrong. This fluctuation was too shocking. He looked up almost immediately and was stunned by the scene in front of him. Tianlei kept striking down, but it was not aimed at Shang Yusen. However, Shang Yusen, who was standing in the air, was indeed triggering Tianlei. What's going on? Elder Ouyang wanted to go forward without saying anything. Suddenly, a figure appeared from the side and blocked his path. Elder Ouyang, please wait. The deep and familiar voice stunned Elder Ouyang. When he saw the person in front of him clearly, his eyes widened in shock. Rong Xiu? Why are you here? Rong Xiu smiled. I just arrived too. I'm waiting for someone. Elder Ouyang looked at the top of the mountain suspiciously. Who are you waiting for? There was no point in lying at this time. Anyway, he would find out in the end, so Rong Xiu was very honest. Chu Yu. Chu Yu? Elder Ouyang's eyelids twitched. He was very familiar with this name. Wasn't this the kid who had just caused a ruckus here a while ago? He reacted for a moment, and his expression became extremely interesting. He pointed at the blurry figure on the top of the mountain in disbelief. You mean, that's Chu Yu? Rong Xiu nodded and explained in a gentle voice, she's busy right now and shouldn't be distracted. Elder Ouyang, please be considerate and go there later. Elder Ouyang, do you have something to do? On this Thousand Wine Mountain, there was so much Tianlei. Wasn't it obvious what that kid was busy with? What is he doing now? Elder Ouyang was so agitated that he started to stutter. Oh, right. And that guy Shang Yusen. What is he doing now? Chu Yu's absurdity was one thing, but why did Shang Yusen seem to be helping? Elder Ouyang was confused. He was in a bad mood. You can ask them when they come down, said Rong Xiu with a smile. Elder Ouyang was also a weapon refiner, so he naturally understood that outsiders should not disturb them at this time. Otherwise, if something really happened, it would be hard to salvage the situation. Therefore, even if he felt that this scene was very strange, he could only suppress his anger and wait. This kid was punished once because he stayed in Thousand Wine Mountain during the forbidden time. Logically speaking, he shouldn't do it again in a short period of time. Today, he appeared again. Did he not learn his lesson, or did you embolden him? Elder Ouyang looked at Rong Xiu suspiciously. A faint light flashed across Rong Xiu's deep eyes, and his thin lips curled slightly. Nothing can escape Elder Ouyang's eyes. It's really you. Elder Ouyang flicked his sleeves. Previously, they said that you valued this Chuyu very much, but I didn't take it seriously. Now it seems that it's true. If it was an ordinary person, Rong Xiu would never have brought him to Thousand Wine Mountain at this time. Seeing Rong Xiu smiling without saying anything, Elder Ouyang couldn't help but raise his voice. Rong Xiu, it's true that you can come and go here at will, but that kid can't. Don't think that Chuyu can escape punishment with your help. Not only did he knowingly break the law, but he also did it again and again. If he didn't teach him a profound lesson this time, he would really be lawless in the future. Rong Xiu thought that if the punishment was still in Guanpengmin Mountain, she would probably be very happy to hear it. But he still had to give her face. So, he seemed to nod in agreement. Elder Ouyang is right. Elder Ouyang was depressed when he saw that Chuyu was stubborn and unmoved by force or persuasion. Chuyu was obviously not very old, but he was very shrewd and thoughtful. Even at his age, he couldn't see through Rong Xiu's thoughts. Just like now. Rong Xiu made it clear that he was on Chuyu's side. Not only did he bring Chuyu in during the forbidden time, but he also allowed him to do so on the top of the mountain. The mouth of the spring was right there. But Rong Xiu's behavior made it impossible for him to really get angry. Because he was Rong Xiu. Elder Ouyang glared at him. It's not wrong for you to protect that Chuyu. But you have to make it clear to me first. What is that kid doing up there now? Rong Xiu paused. Now he's holding the divine weapon that appeared in the Dark Feathers Abyss. Elder Ouyang was stunned for a moment, but he immediately understood. The weapon's soul. That divine weapon was not ordinary, so of course he had heard about it. It was just that he was too excited just now to remember it in time. But now that Rong Xiu reminded him, he immediately understood. Chuyu was going to refine the weapon's soul for that divine weapon. No wonder. She couldn't even trigger the heavenly lightning with her own strength, so why didn't she come here? Shang Yusen also had a problem, but he was still doing his best to help. He still hasn't changed his mind about that thing. Elder Ouyang rolled his eyes. Even if he thought with his toes, he knew that Shang Yusen was definitely going for that divine weapon. Boom! 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 Another earth-shattering sound. The entire Thousand Wine Mountain was as bright as day. As those Tianlei continued to fall, the golden patterns on Scarlet Heaven's sword gradually appeared after being refined over and over again. Chu Luyue held the sword hilt tightly with both hands, held his breath, and stared at the scabbard. Finally, the last pattern lit up. Swoosh! The eyes of the dragon head on the sword hilt suddenly burned with flames. One gold, one blue. It was like a dragon that had been sleeping for a long time had finally woken up. Roar! The dragon's roar roared. It resounded throughout the world. Chu Luyue gritted his teeth and pulled the sword hilt with all his might. Clang! The sword body finally separated from the scabbard. At this moment, all the Tianlei in the sky suddenly fell together. Shang Yusen's heart skipped a beat. There was not enough Tianlei. He immediately turned around and shouted at Elder Ouyang, Ouyang. Don't waste your breath. Come up and help. Elder Ouyang was stunned for a moment. Is he calling me? Shang Yusen raised his voice, hurry up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1246. The corner of Elder Ouyang's mouth twitched. It was fine that Shang Yusen wanted to help Chuyu, but now he was calling him over? What was going on? But looking at the situation in the sky, it was indeed very urgent. Elder Ouyang clenched his fists. Helping you this time, I'll get it back later. After saying that, he finally moved and rushed into the air. On the top of the mountain, Chu Liuyue's figure was already covered by countless Tianlei and could not be seen at all. The night sky was dark, and all the Tianlei had just struck down. But the artifact's soul was obviously not completed yet, and he had to continue to attract more Tianlei. Elder Ouyang stood in the air with his hands crossed in front of him. An astonishing aura instantly enveloped him. Swish. He pointed to the sky. Soon, a loud sound came from the layers of rolling dark clouds. A silver Tianlei appeared again. With this one, the appearance of the heavenly lightning after that became logical. After a while, the sky was once again illuminated by several intertwined Tianlei. Only then did Shang Yusen finally heave a sigh of relief. If he was a little later, he was afraid that he would not be able to make it. The closer it was to the end, the more he could not relax. He looked down and couldn't help but murmur, "This kid, so many Tianlei, how did he get through it? Wasn't Chiyu only a rank 7 warrior now?" Even if these Tianlei went straight for the artifact, he would be more or less affected by it if he stood next to it. Moreover, he was the new owner of Scarlet Heaven's sword and was responsible for guiding these forces to temper its soul. The consumption of his strength and spirit was also extremely terrifying. If it were other cultivators of the same level, they would have already fallen to the ground. But Chuyu seemed to be very stable from the beginning to the end. I heard that he even defeated a rank 8 warrior some time ago as a rank 7 warrior. No wonder Elder Meng was so concerned. At first, he didn't take Chuyu too seriously and only thought that he was a little kid who knew how to cause trouble and was a little smart. But it wasn't until now that he realized that this Chuyu did have some ability. The dragon roared. The powerful pressure almost made Chu Luyue breathless. She madly circulated the force in her body and slowly pulled out the sword. From the part of it that had appeared, it could be seen that it was a silver sword. It was about 3 fingers wide, with 2 sharp edges and a thick middle. Just by looking at it, one could clearly feel the sharp and cold aura coming from it. Chu Luyue's heart was beating violently, and all he could hear was the sound of his blood flowing. Even though he had not completely drawn it out, Chu Luyue was already certain that this red cloud sword was more than 100 times stronger than the Long Yuan sword. That was an incomparable power. Occasionally, there would be some silver heavenly lightning flashing across it. However, the power of Tianlei, which was originally filled with a powerful aura, would be instantly devoured or annihilated the moment it landed on the sword. In front of Scarlet Heaven, even Tianlei paled in comparison. Chu Luyue could no longer remember how many Tianlei it had digested. However, as time passed, she gradually felt that something seemed to be condensing in Scarlet Heaven's sword. And the subtle connection between it and her became stronger and stronger. It was so strong that, at this moment, she could even faintly sense how much power Tianlei had been devoured by Scarlet Heaven's sword. A venerable artifact, seizing the power of endless Tianlei, tempering the artifact's soul. From this, one could see how powerful it was. At this moment, the few people on Thousand Wine Mountain were focused on Scarlet Heaven's sword. However, not far below Chu Luyue, some strange changes were also happening in the small spring. The calm water rippled slightly, and countless silver Tianlei gathered under the water, swimming and interweaving. A red figure was buried in it. It was Dumpling. The surrounding heavenly lightning continued to wander around its body. And the aura on its body was also quietly changing. Scarlet Heaven's sword was consuming Tianlei faster and faster. Not long after, Elder Ouyang noticed that the number of Tianlei in the sky was decreasing. He couldn't help but look back. Why is it so difficult to temper the artifact soul with this thing? The speed at which he attracted Tianlei couldn't keep up with the speed at which it was devouring. Shang Yusen also noticed this situation and couldn't help but frown. Scarlet Heaven's sword was more powerful than he had expected. It needed more Tianlei to continuously temper it. But now, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and Ouyang's situation might not be any better. Perhaps, even if the two of them tried their best, it still wouldn't be enough. At this moment, a tall and slender figure silently appeared in midair. Rongxiu glanced at the sky. His expression was very calm. Then, he gently raised his hand. Boom! Almost in the blink of an eye, several Tianlei quickly gathered behind the clouds. These Tianlei didn't hesitate at all and slashed straight down. In an instant, it was as if silver swords were raining down. Elder Ouyang and Shang Yusen both looked back in shock. Damn it, when did Rong Xiu become so strong? Shang Yusen couldn't help but curse. Elder Ouyang also swallowed his saliva with difficulty. How would I know? It had only been a few years, and Rong Xiu had already broken through to such a level. At this moment, Chu Luyue finally completely pulled Scarlet Heaven's sword out of its scabbard. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1247. The moment the long sword was unsheathed, there seemed to be a layer of invisible barrier shattering. An aura that seemed to come from a distant time and space instantly rushed out of the Scarlet Heaven's sword and entered Chu Luyue's body. It was as if there was a thread connecting her to the Scarlet Heaven sword. The Scarlet Heaven sword, which was originally extremely heavy, suddenly became as light as a feather at this moment. Chu Liyue's previous internal injuries also began to rapidly recover under the nourishment of this vast and gentle power. That aura was familiar, but also unfamiliar. It was familiar because it was mixed with the power of the sword's soul of the Dragon Abyss sword. Vaguely, it also seemed to have the aura of Taizu. As for the unfamiliar, that was the original power of the Scarlet Heaven sword. She looked at the Scarlet Heaven sword in her hand, and something seemed to surge in her heart. In the next moment, she swung her sword, a terrifying sword chi swept forward. After a short silence, a large number of trees in front of her were cut in half. When those trees fell together, Chu Luyue realized what had happened and couldn't help but widen her eyes slightly. She just wanted to give it a try subconsciously. It was just a light wave, but how could it produce such a terrifying power? At a glance, all the trees that could be seen had been silently cut down. But this was not the end. Because these trees were unable to block this sword chi. Therefore, after it swept through the lush forest, its speed did not decrease at all and it headed straight for the barrier of the Thousand Wine Mountain. Stop it! Elder Ouyang was shocked and hurriedly shouted. Shang Yusen was about to move when he saw a figure flash past his eyes. It was Rong Xiu. He raised his wrist and a golden stream of light flew out quickly. Boom! The speed of this force was extremely fast. It caught up from behind and finally managed to stop the sword chi before it could hit the barrier. The two forces collided fiercely and produced an explosive sound. The barrier was impacted by the aftershock and shook violently. Elder Ouyang trembled with fear when he saw this. He hurriedly rushed over. He often came to the Thousand Wine Mountain, so he was very familiar with this and quickly strengthened the barrier. After confirming that the barrier was no longer in danger of being damaged, he let out a long sigh of relief. If the barrier was broken, everyone would know what had happened on Thousand Wine Mountain. It wouldn't be good if things got out of hand. Thinking of this, he became angry again. He raised his eyebrows and glared at Chu Luyue, grinding his teeth. Chu Yu. You better give me an explanation. Chu Luyue touched his nose and carefully put away the Scarlet Heaven sword. With a thought, Scarlet Heaven's sword directly went to her dantian. In this way, she could still clearly sense all the movements on Scarlet Heaven's sword. This made her believe that Scarlet Heaven's sword's soul had been completely tempered, and it had indeed completely recognized her as its master. Her heart, which had been hanging in the air, was finally at ease. The most important matter had been resolved. Next, it was time to deal with the subsequent troubles. She looked at Elder Ouyang with a helpless expression, but her eyes were clear. Elder Ouyang, I know I was wrong. No matter what, it was always good to admit his mistake first. However, Elder Ouyang already had experience, so he did not fall for her trick at all. With one hand behind his back, he snorted coldly. You know you were wrong. This old man didn't see it at all. Chu Yu, this is not the first time you broke the rules and barged into Thousand Wine Mountain, right? This old man remembers that it has only been a month since you were locked up in Pengmin Mountain for 10 days. Not to mention that you were also locked up in the middle of the month because of other mistakes. What, are you uncomfortable if you don't cause trouble for a day? Elder Ouyang said angrily. You really don't learn from your mistakes. Chu Luyue waited for him to scold her before explaining herself in a low voice. Elder Ouyang, this student really didn't mean it. You also saw the situation just now. That divine weapon needs to be tempered, so this student can only come here. And after coming here, it directly went out of control, which led to the following things. Don't give me that. Elder Ouyang irritably interrupted Chu Liuyue's words and only felt a headache. Don't you know what level of strength you have now? You actually want to use your own strength to temper the soul of this divine weapon now. Do you think that you have been living too well during this period of time, or are you really not afraid of death? If something really happened, no one would be able to help her. Chu Liyue heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Although Elder Ouyang's words were harsh, he still considered her in his heart. Moreover, if he really didn't like her, he wouldn't have helped her without reservation just now. In the end, he still had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Chu Liyue smiled at Elder Ouyang. Isn't this student fine? Elder, although this student is young and inexperienced, I also know that life is precious and I don't dare to joke about this kind of thing. If he really didn't have the slightest confidence and urged her to come, she wouldn't have agreed. Elder Ouyang choked. What she said was not without reason. After all, whoever obtained such a treasure would not think too much about it. But it was still too dangerous. What, do you think that with Rongxiu around, you will be safe? Chu Liyue was silent for a moment and nodded seriously. Yes. You, Elder Ouyang felt even more choked. Rongxiu's lips slightly curved into a perfect arc, and he chuckled. Elder Ouyang, since I brought her here, I will naturally bring her back in one piece. You. Elder Ouyang flicked his sleeve. This interrogation couldn't continue. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1248. Elder Ouyang couldn't ask the two of them anymore, so he simply changed his target. Shang Yusen. What's wrong with you? Rongxiu was fooling around with Chu Yu. Who was he? How could he help the tyrant? But Shang Yusen was really not afraid of Elder Ouyang. Hearing this, he crossed his arms and said lazily, Didn't you see it just now? Help him. Didn't you see what he's holding in his hand? He had been thinking about Scarlet Heaven's sword for many years, but he couldn't see it. Now that he finally had the chance, it had already recognized Chu Yu as its master. Of course, he was unwilling. But what could he do? A divine weapon of this level would not easily recognize a master. Even if he had been thinking about it for many years, he didn't dare to have such extravagant hopes. From the beginning to the end, he was just thinking about waiting for Scarlet Heaven's sword to be born. After it was brought back to the academy, he could seize the opportunity to observe and study it closely. Now, it had become Chu Yu's divine weapon. Other than the word opportunity, there was no other way to describe it. Chu Yu wanted to refine the weapon's soul for it. How could he just watch and ignore it? After all, he had been thinking about it for many years, so he still had some thoughts in his heart. Even if it wasn't for Chu Yu, he had to do it for Scarlet Heaven's sword. Elder Ouyang felt uncomfortable all over. He closed his eyes and held his forehead with a headache. None of them were easy to deal with. However, it just so happened that these people were all eloquent, making it extremely difficult for him to even refute. Ouyang, there's no point in asking this now. Shang Yusen touched his chin. Didn't you participate just now? Elder Ouyang, if it wasn't for Shang Yusen urging him, would he have done this? It was his fault for being muddle-headed at that time. He actually helped. What you mean is that we're all in the same boat now? Shang Yusen looked at him strangely with an expression that said, Aren't you talking nonsense? Elder Ouyang's eyebrows twitched violently. He felt that it was wrong for him to even think about communicating with them. Shang Yusen, he was not in the academy all year round. Whenever he came back, he would go into seclusion to cultivate. He had always been carefree and did things according to his mood. Rongxiu, one of the most outstanding geniuses in the academy. His position in the academy was extremely high, and he had even more privileges than some of the elders. Chu Yu, there was nothing much to say about this. He was just an audacious brat. You've even taught me and made mistakes again. Elder Ouyang took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Shang Yusen, Bo Yan will know about what happened tonight sooner or later. Shang Yusen nodded. Of course he would know. The profound formation at the foot of the Thousand Wine Mountain and the surrounding barrier still had a portion of his power. However, this is nothing. He already knew that Scarlet Heaven Sword was in Chu Yu's hands. Refining the artifact soul. Could it still be considered a mistake? If it was in my hands, I would have done the same. Shang Yusen said indifferently with a regretful expression. Unfortunately, I'm not that lucky. As he spoke, he looked at Chu Luyue. I've helped you today. How about lending this Scarlet Heaven Sword to me for a day? Chu Luyue already knew that he had been concerned about Scarlet Heaven Sword for many years, so she nodded very straightforwardly. Chu will naturally repay Elder's kindness with gusto. Whenever you want it, just tell me. In any case, Scarlet Heaven Sword had already completely become hers. No one else could forcefully take it away from her, so there was nothing to worry about. Seeing that she was so straightforward, Shang Yusen instantly appreciated her a little more. Ha ha ha. Good. Just based on your words, I didn't help you for nothing today. As he spoke, he was so excited that he even reached out his hand, wanting to pat Chu Luyue's shoulder. Rong Xiu silently took a step forward and stood between the two of them, preventing Shang Yusen's fan-like palm from landing on him. Elder Ouyang, I actually brought junior brother Chu Yu here today. Everything happened because of me. I am willing to take all responsibility for this matter. Rong Xiu, you, Elder Ouyang had long expected that Rong Xiu would stand up for him, but when he really heard him say so, he couldn't help but be surprised. He really didn't understand why Rong Xiu was so protective of Chu Yu. But it had to be said that with Rong Xiu's appearance, this matter wouldn't be too serious. He took a deep look at Rong Xiu, shook his head, and sighed. You haven't set foot here for a few years. I never expected that this time, you actually. Halfway through his words, he stopped, as if he wanted to say something but hesitated. Rong Xiu's expression was the same as usual, and he smiled faintly. I haven't had time to thank you for today's matter. Elder Ouyang completely lost his temper. He looked around and furrowed his brows. On the top of the mountain, it was a mess. Countless mountains and forests had collapsed. Because of the bombardment of countless Tianlei, large patches of black appeared on the mountain rocks, and some even had deep cracks. It wasn't difficult for anyone to guess what had happened here. It seems that Wine Mountain has to be closed for a while. It would take a lot of effort to repair it. In the sky, the dark clouds gradually dissipated. It was already early in the morning, and a ray of white appeared on the horizon. It seemed that it would be daybreak soon. Let's go. Let's go see Bo Yan together. Elder Ouyang let out a long breath and took the lead to leave. Chu Luyue turned back to look at the spring. Dumpling was still inside. She opened her mouth and was about to shout when a thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Kid, what are you looking at? Hurry up and follow. Elder Ouyang urged from the front. Chu Luyue retracted her gaze. I'm coming. Her figure flashed, and she left with him, never looking back. In the spring at the top of the mountain, a ripple flashed across and disappeared in an instant. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1249. Donghuang Clock Tower. In the solemn hall, the air seemed to have frozen. Elder Bo Yan sat at the top without any expression on his face. Only his slightly clenched fists showed that he was not as calm as he appeared to be. In front of him stood the 4 people who just came out of Thousand Wine Mountain. That's the gist of it. Elder Ouyang explained the cause and effect of the incident, and his mouth was almost dry from all the talking. After that, the hall fell into dead silence again. After a while, Elder Bo Yan spoke slowly. So, you rushed here early in the morning because you guys destroyed half of Thousand Wine Mountain? Shang Yusen could not help but remind him. Mainly to help Chuyu refine Scarlet Cloud Sword's soul, the soul. Cough, it's just that some trees and rocks were destroyed, then. The spring is still fine. He did not say the last sentence, and even the words he said before became much softer under Elder Bo Yan's gaze. Those who knew Elder Bo Yan knew that he was rarely angry. But once he was angry, it was extremely difficult to deal with. Even Shang Yusen and Elder Ouyang, who had worked with him for many years, felt a chill. Chuyu, in that case, this matter was still caused by you? Chu Liuyue's shoulders drooped, and he lowered his head slightly. This student was rash and made a big mistake. Elder Bo Yan, please punish me. Of course you should be punished. Elder Bo Yan really did not know what to say. This Chuyu, just when I thought he would be obedient and stop, he kept causing new problems. And each time, it was more serious than the last. This time, he even implicated Shang Yusen and Ouyang. Right, there was also Rong Xiu. Elder Bo Yan, if I did not take the initiative today, junior brother Chu, you would definitely not go to Thousand Wine Mountain. Rong Xiu's tone was calm, but also very sincere. I promised you before that I would teach junior brother Chu you well. So now, the person who should be punished is me. Elder Bo Yan was so angry that he laughed. You think I won't punish you? You can't get away with this matter. Rong Xiu, if you want to take on everything, you have to see if it's feasible, and if you can take on the responsibility. His gaze swept across the few of them. None of you can escape. What kind of place was the Thousand Wine Mountain? It's fine if Chuyu doesn't know, but the remaining three are very clear. Under such circumstances, they actually dared to do such a thing. They were simply trying to overturn the heavens. The four of them quieted down. Even Shang Yusen had lost his temper and stood there obediently. Elder Bo Yan closed his eyes. Who else knows about this? Elder Ouyang said, apart from the people in the hall, no one else knows. In other words, only Elder Bo Yan had received the news. This made Elder Bo Yan relax a little. If things got out of hand, it wouldn't be easy to clean up the mess. He fell into deep thought and began to consider how to punish these people. Time seemed to pass extremely slowly. Since Elder Bo Yan did not speak, the remaining four also remained silent. Finally, after a long while, Elder Bo Yan raised his head and looked at Chu Luyue. Chu Yu. Student is here. That artifact spirit has been refined successfully. Elder, it's done. Elder Bo Yan nodded. Although this matter was ridiculous, it wasn't completely fruitless. That divine artifact had already become Chu Yu's, and no one could snatch it away. Now that he was able to refine the artifact spirit and merge with it, it could be considered a fortunate thing. Although no one said anything about the divine artifact recognizing Chu Yu as its master, but in reality, there were quite a number of elders who were in the know who were extremely unhappy. In order to take back this artifact, the academy had prepared for a long time and put in a lot of effort. But in the end, it was taken by a new student who had just entered the academy for 2 months. Of course, they wouldn't be happy about it. But because this matter had already happened and couldn't be changed, they could only accept it. Only when Chuyu took out his strength to prove himself, would he be able to convince those people. Elder Bo Yan actually thought highly of Chuyu, and because of this, he gave him chances time and time again. Even if Chuyu had violated the rules a few times, he still stood on Chuyu's side. This time, Chuyu had gone overboard, but he couldn't really do anything to him. After thinking about it for a long time, the only good news was that he had managed to refine a weapon soul. Elder Bo Yan comforted himself as he waved at Chu Luyue. Alright, you can go back first. Later, I will discuss with your master and see what kind of punishment we should give you. Chu Luyue's thoughts moved slightly, and she instantly guessed that Elder Bo Yan had something to say to the other three, so she tactfully took her leave. Yes. She bowed, then quickly turned and left the hall. Her actions were clean and tidy, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. Until her figure completely disappeared outside the door, Elder Bo Yan then looked at the remaining 3 people in front of him. His brows slowly creased, and his voice became more serious. This time, did it involve the spring eye? No. Elder Ouyang immediately said. At that time, all of us were above the mountain peak, and there was still some distance from the spring eye. In fact, the Tianlei had been swallowed by the Scarlet Heaven Sword, and other than some remnant energy waves that caused some damage to the surroundings, everything else was fine. Of course, this was ignoring Chu Yu's last unconscious strike. That's good. However, I will still personally check it later. Elder Bo Yen said. Regarding this, the three of them had no objections. The spring eye was of great importance, and it was normal for Elder Bo Yen to be so cautious. This matter must be kept a secret, and no one else can know about it. If one more person knew, it would be more troublesome. Although your actions today were pardonable. However, this punishment cannot be avoided. Elder Bo Yen looked at the three of them. Think about it yourselves, what should we do about this? The sky gradually brightened. When Chu Luiyue walked out of the Donghuang Bell Tower, it was already morning. However, there were not many people in the Qingming Square at this time, so no one saw her walk out. Chu Luiyue looked back at the closed door, pursed her lips, and then turned to leave, heading straight for Jiuheng Mountain. When Chu Luiyue returned to Jiuheng Mountain, she felt that something was wrong the moment she landed. She paused for a moment, but still walked forward. When she opened the door, she saw a familiar face. Duge Mabao was sitting upright, and when he heard the sound, he looked up. Debao Chu Luiyue called out to him, but when she met that pair of demonic purple eyes, she inexplicably felt a little guilty. Duge Mabao just looked at her quietly. You went to Thousand Wine Mountain during the ban again? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1250. Chu Luiyue sighed in her heart. She knew that nothing could be hidden from him. Duge Mabao seemed to have countless pairs of eyes in the academy. No matter what happened, he could always quickly and clearly understand it. Chu Luiyue had long felt that this matter was too strange, but she had never been able to get an answer. Just like now. Last night on Thousand Wine Mountain, there were indeed only the four of them. With the protection and concealment of the barrier outside the mountain, no one outside knew about it. Logically speaking, other than the four of them, Elder Bo Yen should be the only one who knew about this. And they were the ones who took the initiative to confess to Elder Bo Yen. Duge Mabao's guess was so accurate. It really didn't make sense. Yes. Chu Luiyue chose to tell the truth. She didn't think that she had the ability to deceive Duge Mabao. Duge Mabao frowned slightly, and the look in his eyes became dangerous. Have you forgotten what I told you before? Of course, Chu Luiyue didn't forget. At that time, it was because Duge Mabao made it clear that she was not allowed to enter Thousand Wine Mountain at that time that she obediently obeyed until now. Even if Dumpling stared at the spring and refused to leave every time, she never stayed there for too long. The situation today is indeed a little special, Chu Luiyue explained helplessly. I went to refine my weapon soul. Duge Mabao snorted and turned his head away. Even if you don't go to Thousand Wine Mountain, there are other ways. There are many mountains where the weapon refiners are, and there are a few of them overseeing it. It's the same if you go to them. Why do you have to do this? Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. Debao. Do you think that I can take this path? Since the first day she entered the academy, she had already heard many rumors about the weapon refiners. They were arrogant, unsociable, cold, and rarely came out even once in a year. She didn't even have enough time to admire them. How could they think of such a solution? Although she was bold and occasionally acted presumptuously, it didn't mean that she didn't know her limits. Duge Mabao choked. Of course you. His voice stopped abruptly, and a complicated emotion flashed through his eyes. Chu Luiyue did not see the change in his expression clearly, but she could tell that something was amiss with his tone. She could not help but ask curiously, of course, what's wrong with me? Duge Mabao closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his eyes had regained their clarity. It's nothing. I was careless. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. She still felt that Dugu Mabao's answer was a little strange, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Even if you can't do it, Rong Xiu can. However, he brought you directly to Thousand Wine Mountain. Humph. Dugu Mabao sneered. Rong Xiu thought that the situation was not chaotic enough. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes slightly and didn't reply. She hadn't thought of this before, but Rong Xiu was the number 1 on the Green Cloud ranking. How could she have forgotten about this? Judging from the polite attitude of the elders in the academy towards Rong Xiu, if he personally came forward, it might not be impossible to invite him. However, just as Dugu Mabao said, he didn't do so. However, this was understandable. After all, it was best not to owe favors. Relatively speaking, it was much more troublesome to ask those senior refiners for help than to go to Thousand Wine Mountain directly. Even though Rong Xiu might face quite a bit of punishment if he chose the latter, Rong Xiu definitely had his own considerations before he made this choice. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment, then walked over with an earnest smile. Dabao, don't be angry. This matter is already in the past, isn't it? Not only did I come back safely, but I also successfully tempered the weapon's soul. Even if I receive a little punishment, the benefits definitely outweigh the disadvantages. Dugu Mabao didn't say anything. How was he going to explain to her that he wasn't just worried about this? After pausing for a moment, Dugu Mabao finally shook his head. If there's a next time, I won't let you off. Chu Luiyue smiled, her eyes curved. All right. Dugu Mabao's gaze swept across her face, opened his mouth, and finally said, since the weapon's soul has been tempered, you should study and cultivate more. There are very few venerable artifacts in the world. It's a great honor for you to be able to obtain one. You must cultivate well. Chu Luiyue nodded vigorously. Definitely. After spending so much effort, if she couldn't make the best use of it, wouldn't it be a huge loss? Dugu Mabao nodded and immediately stood up to leave. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but say, Dabao, are you leaving now? Aren't you going to stay a little longer? Dugu Mabao stopped in his tracks. I'll be back in the evening. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Ever since they came to Lingxiao College, she almost never spent too much time with Dugu Mabao during the day. His daily training was also held between evening and night. It was as if he had other important things to do at other times. But in the Lingxiao Academy, what kind of things did he need to do every day? Dabao, when you're not with me, where are you? Chu Luiyue finally couldn't help but ask. If I want to look for you, I don't even know where to go. Dugu Mabao turned around and glanced at her, his face expressionless. He said calmly, you don't have to look for me. If you're in trouble in the college, I'll rush over. After saying that, he directly lifted his feet and left. Chu Luiyue's frown deepened. Dabao. What secret was he hiding? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1251. Chu Luiyue stayed anxiously in her residence for a while. In the afternoon, news came from the academy. Thousand Wine Mountain would be closed for maintenance for a month. The students were very surprised. After all, although Thousand Wine Mountain had a ban every day, it had never been closed for a month. Everyone was discussing this and coming up with all sorts of guesses. But in reality, even many elders were confused about this. It was still fine yesterday, but today, it was inexplicably going into seclusion for quite some time. It was really strange. But many elders knew that Thousand Wine Mountain was not an ordinary place, so they did not ask much. Although the students regretted that they lost a place to relax, it was only for a month, so they accepted it naturally. Of course, it was meaningless if they did not accept it. Chu Luiyue wanted to go out for a walk and then go to Thousand Wine Mountain to see Dumpling, but after thinking about it, she gave up. Now, she could only hope that Dumpling could safely pass the month in Thousand Wine Mountain. After temporarily putting this matter aside, Chu Luiyue began to wait for Rong Xiu to return. At the same time, she was waiting for the punishment she was about to face. She was not naive enough to think that she could escape. From Elder Bo Yan's reaction, this was the angriest he had ever been, and he would not let it go so easily. One must know that the last time he knew that she had taken the Scarlet Heaven sword for herself, he did not show such an expression. This showed how important Thousand Wine Mountain was. This also made Chu Luiyue even more certain that there was a huge secret related to the academy hidden in the spring at the top of Thousand Wine Mountain. Chu Luiyue could not think of what the academy would do to her. Although Elder Wanzheng and Rong Xiu were helping her, she instinctively felt that her fate would not be good. They waited all the way until nightfall. But the one who returned was not Rong Xiu, but Elder Wensi. Chu Yu. Elder Wensi stood outside the barrier and placed his green jade token on it. At the same time, he called out Chu Luiyue's name. Chu Luiyue, who had been waiting quietly in the room, immediately got up and walked out when he heard the noise. She saw Elder Wensi outside the barrier at a glance. At this moment, he was looking at her with a complicated gaze with one hand behind his back. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, and he unconsciously slowed down his steps. Elder Wensi, why are you here? Elder Wensi didn't say anything. He just looked at her like that, as if he was probing, puzzled, and conflicted. After a long while, he said, "Come out first." "Oh." Chu Luiyue said, then walked out of the barrier, and then stood in front of Elder Wensi. "Did you get into trouble again?" Elder Wensi tried to make his voice sound calm, but in fact, everyone could hear the suppressed emotions in it. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment before nodding. Elder Wensi held his forehead, not knowing what to say. "Didn't you just come out from Pengmin Mountain?" "Ah. Why is he causing trouble again?" It had been a long time since he saw Bo Yan's expression. What was even more shocking was that this time, it seemed to have implicated Rong Xiu, as well as Shang Yusen and Ouyang, those two old fellows. "You're really getting more and more capable. Tell me, what did you do to make Bo Yan so angry?" Chu Luiyue immediately understood. It seemed that Elder Wensi didn't know about this matter. Although Elder Bo Yan was angry, he still chose to suppress this matter. On one hand, it might be because this matter involved a lot of people, and on the other hand, it might be to protect the secret of Thousand Wine Mountain. But Chu Luiyue had no way of knowing about this. She pursed her lips and asked carefully, "Elder Wensi, Rong Xiu, and the others. How are they? You still have the mood to ask them? You can't even protect yourself now." Elder Wensi finally couldn't help but pat the back of Chu Luiyue's head. But considering that the child was still young and looked pitiful, he couldn't bear to hit her too hard. Chu Luiyue hissed, holding her head and looking at him pitifully. Elder Wensi's heart softened at first, then he shuddered. "Pooey. What pitiful." This kid knew that he was amenable to coaxing but not coercion, so he deliberately looked at him like that. It must be. If he really didn't do anything, why would Bo Yan have such a reaction? Unfortunately, Bo Yan seemed to have made up his mind to block the news, and only told him to bring Chu Yu over, but didn't mention the reason. He could only speculate in his heart. But no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out what this kid did to involve so many powerful people. Elder Wensi felt a chill run down his spine, and looked at Chu Luiyue warily. This kid, could it be that one day in the future, he would sell him out as well? They will deal with it themselves, you don't have to worry about it. Right now, Wanzheng is discussing with Bo Yan how to deal with you in the Donghuang Bell Tower. Wanzheng wants you to be there no matter what, so he asked me to bring you over first. Chu Luiyue's heart warmed slightly. Elder Wanzheng should have known about this by now, but he insisted on this request because he was concerned about her. She nodded. "Thank you, Elder Wensi." Elder Wensi snorted. "Let's go." As the elder who recruited Chu Yu, although he wasn't his master, he still had some responsibility. At first, he only felt happy and excited that he had recruited such a rare genius. But now, why did he feel like he had been cheated? And the longer Chu Yu stayed in the academy, the more obvious this feeling became. Elder Wensi couldn't help but sigh when he thought of this. Why did he have to deal with all these troublesome people? Arriving at the Dongwang Bell Tower again and entering the hall, Chu Luiyue clearly felt that the atmosphere was different from before. "I've brought him," Elder Wenxi said. Chu Luiyue quickly looked up to take a look. In the huge hall, Elder Bo Yan and Elder Wanzheng were sitting there. Other than them, Rong Xiao and the other two were no longer there. She retracted her gaze and bowed respectfully. "Student Chu Yu greets Elder Bo Yan and Master." Elder Bo Yan gave Elder Wenxi a look. Elder Wenxi understood tacitly. "Then you guys go ahead, I still have something to do, so I'll leave first." With that, he turned and left. When his figure completely disappeared outside the door, Chu Luiyue immediately felt that the atmosphere in the room had become tense. Even the air seemed to have started to condense. Two pairs of eyes that seemed to have materialized landed on her body. It was as if a sharp knife had scraped past her. "Chu Yu, Bo Yan said that you caused trouble in Thousand Wine Mountain again, is that true?" Elder Wanjing asked in a low voice. Chu Luiyue nodded honestly. "Student is at fault." Elder Wanzheng took a deep breath. Elder Bo Yan snorted. "Wanzheng, he admitted it himself, what else do you want to explain for him?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1252. Elder Wanzheng coughed and lowered his stance. "Ahem, actually I'm not trying to defend him. That divine artifact needs to be refined, right? To be honest, he didn't mean to break the rules, but he couldn't." In the end, Elder Wanzheng couldn't finish his last word. Elder Bo Yan sneered. "This isn't the first time he's made a mistake. If he doesn't learn his lesson this time, in the future," although Wanzheng felt that what Elder Bo Yan said made sense, the person in front of him was still his disciple. He couldn't bear to punish him too harshly. Not to mention that this child was refining the divine artifact's soul. Now, he was officially in possession of a venerable one-god artifact. He was secretly happy, but he couldn't show it in front of Elder Bo Yan. Yes, this punishment is necessary." Elder Wanjing agreed. "But, don't hurt the child's foundation, this was a rare good seedling. If he was hurt, they would be the ones feeling the heartache." Elder Bo Yan had already expected him to say this. Ever since he called Elder Wanjing over, the two had been arguing on this issue for a long time. How could he not know what Elder Wanjing was thinking? Elder Bo Yan shook his head helplessly. "Wanzheng, if you continue to spoil him like this, something will happen sooner or later." Elder Wanzheng couldn't help but say. In the past, there was no one who could cause more trouble than this child. Back then, that girl also, Wanzheng. Elder Bo Yan frowned and immediately shouted at him to stop. Only then did Elder Wanzheng realize that he had said something wrong and fell silent. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. That girl, who? Almost without hesitation, Chu Luiyue felt that they were talking about her. She lowered her eyes slightly, hiding the emotions that flashed across her eyes. In fact, during this period of time, she had already remembered a few things. In the past, she was almost considered a tyrant in Lingxiao College. She had done all kinds of tormenting things. She had used up all the precious herbs in the Medicine Wind Valley. One after another, it was simply uncountable. Otherwise, the elders wouldn't still have lingering fears when mentioning her after leaving the college for so long. However, until now, she still couldn't figure out how she had done those things. She didn't even know when she had broken through to the god realm. The room fell silent. Elder Bo Yan calmed himself down and looked at Chu Luiyue. "Chu Yu, your master loves you dearly and can't bear to punish you. However, this was a serious matter. It would be inappropriate if he was not punished. What do you think?" Chu Luiyue looked up, his gaze clean and sincere. Student knows his mistake and is willing to bear any punishment. Elder Wanzheng wanted to say something but hesitated. However, seeing how resolute Chu Luiyue was, he could only swallow his words. Elder Bo Yan's expression softened. For Chu Yu to have this kind of attitude, it wasn't like he was a rotten wood that couldn't be carved. However, after the previous 2 times, he no longer dared to completely believe that Chuyu would change his ways. Originally, I discussed with your master to lock you up in Pengmin Mountain for a period of time. Chu Liuyue's eyes flickered. However, I did the same thing the previous 2 times, but it didn't seem to have any warning effect on you. Elder Bo Yen could tell that Chuyu didn't seem to be afraid of this matter at all. If it was someone else, they would have become obedient after going there once. However, Chuyu wasn't like that at all. Therefore, he felt that this method was useless against Chuyu. Therefore, this time, I will change to another punishment. Chu Liuyue's heart suddenly felt empty. I thought I could go there again. What a pity, she paused and couldn't help but say. Elder Bo Yen, student has made a serious mistake this time and is willing to accept any punishment. You can lock me up in Pengmin Mountain again. Elder Bo Yen looked at her with a strange expression. Why? Do you really want to go there again? Chu Luyue tactfully stopped this topic. You misunderstood. Student means that student will be willing to accept any punishment you give. Only then did Elder Bo Yen nod in satisfaction. It's good that you have this awareness. As for your punishment, from today onwards, you will be responsible for guarding the Beast Park for a month. Beast Park? A month. Chu Luyue and Elder Wanzheng spoke in unison. The difference was that Chu Luyue didn't know what the Beast Park was, but Elder Wanzheng was shocked that Elder Bo Yen would punish him for a month. Bo Yen. I don't agree. Elder Wanzheng swallowed the vulgarities that were about to come out of his mouth and slammed the table angrily. What kind of place is the Beast Park? You want him to go there for a month? Aren't you sending him to his death? No. This time must be reduced. Elder Bo Yan's expression was calm as he said leisurely, if it was someone else, it would naturally be dangerous. However, don't forget that Chuyu has a contract with a divine beast. Since he has the ability to contract with a red-tailed phoenix, wouldn't he have the ability to guard the Beast Park for a month? Elder Wanjing choked. That's different. Those beasts in the Beast Park have always been free-range. They are untamed and violent. Even if some elders went there, they would occasionally get injured, let alone Chuyu. You have too many concerns. Elder Bo Yen shook his head firmly. Chuyu has caused trouble time and time again, but he is very lucky. Last time, under the siege of so many god-level experts, he managed to escape unscathed. This time, when he was refining his weapon spirit, countless Tianlei struck him, but he came out unscathed. I don't think it's enough to say that he is lucky. Chu Luyue, Elder Wanzheng was speechless. He couldn't help it. After all, he was speaking the truth. In fact, he had been grumbling about this matter for a long time. Chuyu kept causing trouble, but this trouble was not something that ordinary people could cause. That also required some ability. Knowing that there was no room for discussion, Elder Wanzheng hesitated for a long time before agreeing. Let him go, but if he encounters any danger, I will immediately bring him out. As he spoke, he looked at Chu Luyue and reminded him. Chuyu, if anything goes wrong, immediately use your black jade token to call for help. Master will definitely rush over immediately. Don't force yourself at any time. Do you understand? Chu Luyue felt a warmth in his heart. Thank you, Master. Elder Wanzheng looked at the young man in front of him. Probably because he had gone through a lot yesterday, he didn't have a good rest today. His face was haggard and his lips were pale. But when he smiled like this, his eyes were clean and his smile was warm. It made people want to smile with him unconsciously. This child could only smile so innocently now. When he found out what kind of place the Beast Park was, he was afraid. Elder Bo Yen stood up. Let's go. We will send you there personally. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1253. Chu Liuyue's brows twitched slightly. She had been imprisoned at Pengmin Mountain twice. The first time, it was Elder Wensi who sent her there. The second time, it was Rong Xiu. However, this time, Elder Bo Yen actually planned to send her there personally. What exactly was the place that made him so cautious? Of course, this did not exclude the possibility that Elder Bo Yen could not assign anyone to send her there in order to prevent the news from spreading. However, judging from Elder Wan Zheng's vehement objection, that Beast Park should not be a good place to stay. At the very least, when she was imprisoned at Pengmin Mountain, Elder Wan Zheng was never worried about her safety. But this time, Chu Luiyue collected her thoughts and followed closely behind the two of them. The three of them came out of the Donghuang Bell Tower and went straight to the Beast Park. After walking for a while, Chu Luiyue realized that they were heading towards the Xian Master's area. Elder Wanzheng seemed to have seen through her doubts and moved closer to her to explain. Elder Wanzheng said, "The Beast Park is indeed within the Xian Master's area, but it does not belong to them alone. The martial artists and Xian Master's elders will take turns to patrol here." Chu Luiyue nodded. Elder Wanzheng saw that her expression was normal and thought to himself that this brat still did not know what she was going to face later. He could not help but sigh in his heart. Chu Luiyue saw his worry and thought for a while before asking, "Master, is the Beast Park very dangerous?" Elder Wanzheng paused. "Forget it. You will know when we get there." Chu Luiyue could only suppress her curiosity. After going around the rugged mountains, Chu Luiyue even saw a few high-level Xian formations in the middle. After about an hour, Elder Bo Yen finally stopped. "We're here. The Beast Park is below us." Chu Luiyue took a few steps forward and followed Elder Bo Yan's line of sight. Dozens of mountains stretched endlessly. The trees were lush and white mist drifted in the middle of the mountains. At first glance, it looked like a quiet mountain forest. It was no different from the other places in the academy. However, Chu Luiyue knew that things were not that simple. Because in the sky above this mountain region, there was actually a huge silver profound formation. It floated quietly in the air, covering the entire forest in a translucent state. Through the gaps between the streams of light, one could clearly see the scenery below. However, everyone who stood here could feel the astonishing pressure coming from the profound formation. He would never dare to be impudent. Chu Luiyue held his breath. This Xian formation was definitely one of the best Xian formations she had ever seen in her life. Compared to the Academy's barrier, it was not inferior at all. One had to know that constructing such a Xian formation required the joint efforts of many experts. The amount of manpower and resources consumed was incalculable. To be able to construct such a Xian formation within the Academy without caring about the cost, it was enough to prove the preciousness of the area under the Xian formation. Chu Luiyue's gaze carefully swept across the profound formation, and he vaguely felt a few obscure yet valiant auras. That should be the elders in charge of patrolling. In the next moment, Elder Bo Yen flew down. Elder Wanzheng patted Chu Luiyue's shoulder. "Let's go." Chu Luiyue nodded, and rushed down without hesitation. The three of them stood about 100 meters away from the silver profound formation. Standing there, Chu Luiyue could clearly feel the valiant pressure from the profound formation. "I wonder what the situation inside is like," Chu Luiyue thought to himself. Suddenly, an aura rapidly approached. A middle-aged man stepped out from behind the profound formation. "Bo Yen, Wanzheng, why are you guys here?" This man was wearing a white robe, his figure was tall and skinny, and his eyes were sharp. When his gaze swept across them, it made them not dare to move. "Who is this? You guys even brought a brat here?" Elder Bo Yen explained, "This is Chu Yu." After saying that, Chu Luiyue clearly saw a look of understanding flash across the other party's face. It seemed like he had long heard of her great name. Elder Bo Yen raised his chin, "This is Elder Yu Yu." Chu Luiyue inexplicably felt a little embarrassed, but he still bowed respectfully. "Student Chu Yu greets Elder Yu Yu. Chu Yu, this brat, has committed some crimes recently. Wanzheng and I have discussed and decided to throw him here for a month to let him suffer a little and learn from his mistakes." Elder Bo Yen said very straightforwardly. Elder Yu looked at Chu Luiyue with some surprise. What exactly did he do to end up in such a situation? Bo Yan usually wouldn't casually put someone here, let alone for a month. How is your current strength? Elder Yu raised his chin and asked. Take note, I asked all of it. Chu Luiyue paused, and said sincerely, this student is currently at the middle of the 7th rank, 9th rank Celestial Physician, 9th rank Xian Master. After saying that, the scene fell silent for a moment. The three elders looked at Chu Luiyue in unison. Chu Yu, when did you break through to the 9th rank of the Xian Master? Elder Wanjing couldn't help but ask. Chu Luiyue blinked. Just, not long ago. She originally didn't want to say this, but as a Xian Master, Elder Yu's eyesight was very good. She didn't dare to guarantee that if she lied now, she wouldn't be taught a lesson later. Moreover, from the fact that she could open the academy's barrier, he could basically guess this. Elder Wanzhang's lips moved, but he didn't say anything. In the end, he glanced at Elder Bo Yan and snorted. See that? This brat's strength was stronger than they expected. If something really happened to such a rare seedling, he definitely wouldn't let Bo Yan off. Not bad, you're quite honest. Elder Yu nodded. Go in. Digression, remember to watch the pinned event mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1254. Chu Luiyue was stunned. She just went in like that? Elder Yu looked at her strangely. Why, is there a problem? Chu Luiyue shook her head. Seems like this Elder Yu is a swift and decisive person. But this is good too, it saves me a lot of trouble. She took half a step forward and suddenly stopped. She turned back to look at Elder Bo Yan and asked hesitantly. Elder, I wonder if Senior Rong Xiao and the others, they have their own punishments, you don't have to worry about that. Elder Bo Yan waved his hand. In this 1 month, you just have to reflect here. Seeing that she could not get anything out of him, Chu Luiyue could only nod her head. This student understands. With that, she continued to walk forward and stepped through the entrance of the spirit barrier. When her figure disappeared, Elder Yu raised his eyebrows and looked at Elder Wanzheng. 1 month. Wanzheng, you are really willing to part with it? Elder Wanzheng snorted and turned his head away. If Bo Yan did not insist on doing this, would he have agreed? He had only taken in this disciple for 2 months and had been locked up in Pengmin Mountain for 40 days. The amount of time he had spent cultivating with him was only slightly more than 10 days. How could he not feel heartache? But what could he do? Who asked that brat to always cause trouble? No matter how protective he was, there were times when he had no other choice. Elder Bo Yan suddenly spoke up. 1 month might not be able to smooth out his temper. He could see that he had to use extreme methods to deal with Chu Yu. Otherwise, he would not be able to suppress him. You have such a high opinion of him? Elder Yu was surprised. Humph, Elder Bo Yan laughed. Wait till he stays with you for a period of time, you will know. Elder Yu's heart jumped and a trace of uneasiness appeared. Alright, since he's already here, we'll take our leave first. For the remaining month, I will leave that brat to you. Elder Bo Yan finished and was about to leave with Elder Wanzheng. For some reason, Elder Yu inexplicably felt as if he had finally gotten rid of a certain troublesome problem. Elder Wanzheng reluctantly glanced at the barrier. Although he couldn't see anything, he still prayed for his precious disciple in his heart. This month, please don't let anything happen. After Bo Yan and Elder Wanzheng left, Elder Yu also quickly returned to the spirit barrier. Beast Park. Not long after entering this place, Chu Luiyue understood where this name came from. The surroundings were filled with the unique aura of magical beasts. There was a faint smell of blood in the air. That was clearly a unique smell that only came from the blood that flowed out of the torn flesh. Chu Luiyue was walking on a narrow path in the mountains. Bushes grew on both sides of the road, and the branches were luxuriant. The afterglow cast mottled shadows on the ground. It was silent and windless. She walked forward step by step. Occasionally, one could see the marks of magical beasts on the ground. The deeper she went, the tighter her muscles became, and her mind was highly focused. She paid full attention to every tiny sound and every subtle change in her surroundings. Along the way, she turned back to look once. Elder Yu didn't follow her. Obviously, they had made up their minds to let her do everything herself. Roar. Suddenly, a low and violent tiger roar came from the side of the mountain. Chu Luiyue immediately turned to look. Separated by the dense forest, she couldn't see clearly what was going on. However, the powerful pressure contained in that roar caused her mind to go blank for a moment. That was an inestimable power. It was at least a 9th grade magical beast. Chu Luiyue's heart instantly jumped. There were probably more than 1 or 2 magical beasts in this beast park. She took a deep breath and examined her surroundings more carefully before continuing forward. Swoosh! The sound of something piercing through the air could be heard. Chu Luiyue's eyes sharpened, and she quickly dodged to the side. Thud! An extremely sharp grayish-brown steel needle stabbed into the spot where Chu Luiyue was standing just now. The steel needle was thick at the top and sharp at the bottom. Its tip was about the size of an adult's pinky finger. The lower it went, the sharper it became. Because it was wrapped in a powerful force, the tip of the needle was still shaking slightly after it was inserted into the ground. And on the originally flat mountain ground, a few cracks suddenly appeared. This showed how powerful this thing was. If this needle were to hit her body, it would probably pierce through her flesh in an instant. But the key was that this wasn't a yuan instrument. Because there were some fresh bloodstains on its tip, and if one looked carefully, there was a layer of fine hair on it. This was obviously, bang. 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 Heavy and majestic footsteps sounded, and the ground trembled. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, and she stared in the direction of the sound. A huge figure gradually appeared in her line of sight. It was a wild beast that was brownish-black in color. It was tall and sturdy, with 4 strong legs, a silver horn on its head, and a string of steel needles on its back. This was the thing that was shot at Chu Luiyue just now. Its orange-yellow eyes were cold and indifferent, and they were wrapped in a shocking pressure. Its huge feet stepped on the ground, and its sharp claws were clearly visible. There was no doubt that this foot could directly trample a person into meat paste. Chu Luiyue's breathing stagnated. A 9th grade steel spine beast. She had only heard of this kind of magical beast in rumors. It was said that it was born as a 9th grade magical beast, and it was extremely strong. As it grew older, its body would rapidly expand. After it reached adulthood, it would break through the shackles and become a divine beast. It was said that the powerful god-tier steel spine beast's body was as heavy as a mountain. Wherever it went, it would be majestic. The steel needle-like thing on its back was one of its most basic trump cards. It was incomparably hard and extremely sharp. Most importantly, it contained a strong poison. Once injured, a 9th grade martial artist of the same level would die in less than an hour. This showed how powerful this steel spine beast was. And the one in front of her, although its body was huge, it hadn't broken through to the god tier and should still be considered a cub. Of course, even if it was a cub, its body was still terrifyingly huge. Chu Luiyue stood in front of it, as small as an ant. She wasn't even as tall as one of its legs. Under such circumstances, if the other party wanted to directly trample her to death, it seemed to be only a matter of minutes. Both sides were in a stalemate. The steel spine beast first glanced at the steel needle on the ground that had missed, as if it was somewhat dissatisfied that it didn't succeed. Then, its eyes turned and looked at Chu Luiyue. Cold. Awe-inspiring. That was the disdain and indifference based on its powerful strength. A strong killing intent appeared in its eyes. Bang! It raised its leg and took a step forward. Chapter 1255. The origin power in Chu Luiyue's body surged, and starlight flashed on her fingertips. She wouldn't use Scarlet Heaven's sword unless it was a critical moment. Although the steel spine beast in front of her was dangerous, with her current strength, she might not be a match for it. At the very least, escape was the best strategy. However, at this moment, a strange rustling sound suddenly came from behind her. Chu Luyue didn't want to look back, but the sound was getting closer and closer, and it even carried a hint of danger. She had no choice but to be cautious. Thus, she turned her body sideways and quickly glanced in that direction. With this look, Chu Luyue's pupils shrank, and her scalp went numb. Because what came from behind her was actually a group of snakes. Not just one, but a group of snakes entangled with each other. At a glance, there were at least 100 of them. These snakes were about the thickness of a thumb, and their bodies were colorful. Under the afterglow, they reflected a cold and magnificent light. However, at this moment, Chu Luyue wasn't in the mood to appreciate it. Instead, her hair stood on end. Because each of these snakes was a 9th-grade magical beast, the triangular sword-toothed snake. The reason for this name was that their heads were flat and triangular. Every time they were in attack mode, 2 sharp sword-shaped teeth would be exposed, flickering with a cold white light. Of course, they were also poisonous. Their toxicity was stronger than that of the steel spine beast. At this moment, they were in groups and were heading toward Chu Luyue. Wherever they passed, the ground would emit a faint rustling sound. She didn't feel it earlier, but after seeing their true appearance and hearing this sound, Chu Luyue felt her whole body go numb. Now, she was attacked from 2 sides, and she couldn't advance or retreat. In front of her was the steel spine beast, and behind her was the triangular sword-toothed snake. No matter which one it was, she didn't have full confidence that she could finish them off or repel them without getting injured. Chu Luyue clearly felt her whole body stiffen. If Dumpling was here now, these problems could be easily solved. After all, it was a red-tailed phoenix with a noble bloodline. Even if it only relied on this layer of natural bloodline suppression, it would be able to subdue these guys. But now, how could she beat them all by herself? At this moment, Chu Luyue finally understood why Elder Wan Zheng was so against this punishment when Elder Bo Yen suggested it. She recalled the meaningful look in Elder Wan Zheng's eyes before she left. At that time, she had naively thought that it was because he couldn't bear to part with her, but now it seemed that he was clearly worried about her little life. Beast Park, Beast Park. Chu Luyue crazily thought about how to solve her current predicament as she circulated all the strength in her body. 5 specks of light had already appeared on her fingertips. If she couldn't, then she could only ask the help of the 3-eyed eagle. But in the end, it was the last plan was beast was. Many of the 2 was bice beasts, beasts, be like beasts, beasts. Jiang Ziyuan had already begun to suspect her because she had brought along a red-tailed phoenix. Fortunately, Lu Yintong had one as well, which gave her room to explain herself. But once she knew about the existence of the 3-eyed eagle, she would be able to confirm Chu Luyue's true identity. It could be said that it was a coincidence for cultivators in this world to have beasts of the same race. But if one had 2, there was definitely a problem. Chu Luyue didn't know much about the Beast Park. Other than Elder Bo Yen mentioning that there were a few elders patrolling the area, she wasn't sure if there were other people around. Moreover, if the elders knew about this, they wouldn't be able to keep it a secret. Although there were many elders in Lingxiao College and they each had their own duties, they still kept in contact with each other. Moreover, information was passed on very quickly. This was good for the college. It allowed the college to deal with many things quickly and efficiently. But it wasn't so good for Chu Luyue now. The 3 parties were speechless. The surrounding space seemed to be solidifying inch by inch. Chu Luyue's heart was beating violently. Thump. Thump. The steel spine beast and the 3-horned sword-toothed snake also noticed each other's existence. Hiss. Many of the 3-horned sword-toothed snakes made strange and numbing sounds. Their green eyes flashed with undisguised ruthlessness and murderous intent. Bang! The steel spine beast took a step forward. The rocks under its feet shattered and the ground shook. It didn't show any signs of weakness. Chu Luiyue instantly understood something. This is. Both parties entered a hostile state because of fighting for her? Of course, Chu Luiyue was very clear that they weren't fighting for her because they liked her. They were fighting for the right and opportunity to kill her. Fight. Start fighting. Chu Luiyue shouted silently in her heart. As long as both parties were fighting, she could find a chance to leave this place. Chi. The steel spine beast made the first move. A steel needle shot out from its back. Tut. That thing was very fast. Chu Luiyue only saw a straight and blurry mark. The next moment, she heard a familiar sound. That steel needle was inserted into the position one step away from the three-horned sword-toothed snake. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly tightened. No fiend could remain calm after being provoked like this. This time, a fierce battle was unavoidable. Hiss. Just as Chu Luiyue was waiting for the chaotic battle to begin, the three-horned sword-toothed snake suddenly started to retreat. Chu Luiyue was stunned. What was going on? They weren't fighting anymore. But before she could figure it out, the steel spine beast turned around and raised its foot to step on her. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1256. Chu Luiyue almost cursed out loud. This triangular sword-teethed snake was too useless. They were so brave just a moment ago. The steel spine beast had only launched a probing attack, and they actually retreated just like that. This decision was made too hastily. Chu Luiyue simply couldn't understand. Although the triangular sword-teethed snake's individual combat power couldn't compare to the steel spine beast, they had the advantage in numbers. They didn't even have a friendly spar. Wasn't this too cowardly? She didn't have time to think too much. Seeing the steel spine beast charging straight at her, she quickly dodged to the side. Bam! The steel spine beast stomped heavily on the ground. A rather deep pit appeared on the originally flat ground. Several cracks quickly spread out in all directions. Chu Luiyue randomly chose a direction with dense forest and quickly headed forward. She had already entered the beast park. Danger lurked in all directions. It didn't matter which direction she went. The most important thing now was to get rid of the steel spine beast as soon as possible. The denser the forest, the more advantageous it was for her. Chu Luiyue's movements were nimble. In the blink of an eye, her figure had disappeared into the lush forest. Roar! The steel spine beast raised its head and roared. The trees that were relatively close to him were crushed by this pressure and actually directly exploded. The steel spine beast lifted its leg and ran in the direction of Chu Luiyue. As for the triangular sword-teethed snake, after retreating for a distance, it suddenly dispersed. Hundreds of snakes scattered in all directions. Their bodies were very small. Once they burrowed into the grass, they could hide perfectly. Therefore, after dispersing, they burrowed into the forest and hid themselves. There was only the extremely subtle sound of snake scales sliding across the ground. It was occasionally audible, but it also disappeared very quickly. Chu Luiyue used her full speed to escape forward. She leaped and jumped like a mountain elf. Her figure was faintly discernible in the forest. But even so, she couldn't successfully shake off the steel spine beast that was chasing after her. Its destructive power was even more terrifying than Chu Luiyue had expected. She originally thought that by relying on these dense trees, she could form an obstacle to the steel spine beast and slow it down. But in reality, the steel spine beast didn't care about this at all. Its physical strength was extremely strong. Everywhere it passed, it destroyed everything in its path. Thus, one man and one beast, one at the front and one at the back, began to compete in the forest. Elder Yu stood with his hands behind his back and waited at the foot of the mountain for a while. Even if he didn't see it for himself, he could roughly guess what had happened from the changes in the energy fluctuations. He couldn't help but snort. It seemed like Chu Yu was already entangled. He didn't know how long this kid could last. One had to know that in this place, apart from the cubs, the lowest level of adult magical beasts was level 9. They were not easy to deal with. Furthermore, in order to nurture and stimulate the abilities of these magical beasts to the greatest extent, there was basically no one in the entire beast park other than a few elders who were in charge of maintenance and patrolling. These demonic beasts were especially sensitive to the aura of humans, and they were born with a strong desire to attack. Chu Yu's talent and strength were not bad, but he was still a child in the end. He was no match for these magical beasts. Let's hope this kid can survive the night. He glanced at the setting sun and shook his head with a smile. The sky quickly darkened. The forest was shady, and the lighting was even worse. As Chu Lue ran forward, she secretly thought of other ways. This couldn't go on. She couldn't shake off the steel spine beasts with her own strength. Furthermore, as time passed, her physical strength was rapidly depleting, and her speed inevitably decreased. However, the steel spine beasts seemed to be getting braver as they fought. They were born to be good at fighting, and their explosive power and endurance were extremely strong. Chu Lue was really worried that they would drag her to her death in the end. It wasn't that she didn't think of fighting the steel spine beasts head-on. In fact, she had already accumulated her strength and was prepared at the beginning. However, when she saw the triangular sword-toothed snakes choose to retreat, she hesitated. To be able to make them so fearful was enough to prove the power of these steel spine beasts. Although she could fight against a level 8 warrior now, she could only lose in front of a level 9 warrior. Moreover, level 9 warriors of the same level were far inferior to level 9 magical beasts in terms of combat strength. After thinking about it, it wasn't feasible to use force. She had to think of other ways. However, this steel spine beast kept chasing after her relentlessly. She didn't even have a chance to breathe, so what other good ideas could she have? Suddenly, Chu Lue felt a warning in her heart. Her mind was highly tense, and she immediately forced herself to stop. Previously, she had been moving forward at high speed. Now that she suddenly stopped, it caused the blood in her lungs to churn. However, she couldn't care less about this now. Because, danger was ahead. Bang! The sound of heavy footsteps could be heard. This sound was somewhat familiar. It was very similar to the footsteps of the steel spine beasts, but it was several times heavier. This time, she clearly hadn't seen the other party's shadow, but Chu Lue felt that the other party had directly stepped on her heart. She stood on a tree and held onto the tree trunk with one hand. Her entire body was tense, and she almost suffocated. The next moment, a figure that was like a small mountain appeared in front of her. With just a glance, Chu Lue immediately recognized that this was also a steel spine beast. Moreover, its body size was several times that of the previous one. This was definitely an adult steel spine beast. It was walking towards her. Trees fell and rocks shattered. For a moment, Chu Lue almost suspected that this mountain might be flattened by it. Bang! 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 Suddenly, for some reason, the steel spine beast behind her suddenly sped up. Roar! This cry was very different from the previous one. It lacked the cold and dignified aura and had a hint of joy and coquettishness. And this was clearly aimed at the steel spine beast that had just appeared opposite them. Chu Lue hurriedly turned back to take a look, and her heart immediately turned cold. These two seemed to be mother and son. Then what other way did she have to leave this place safely and unharmed? Her hands were tightly clasped on the tree trunk, and her knuckles turned white. Because of the long run, she had consumed a lot of strength. At this time, her forehead was already covered with fine beads of sweat, and her back was almost drenched. I can't go on like this, Chu Lue gritted her teeth. If I'm really forced into a desperate situation, then I have no choice but to show my trump card. Boom! The steel spine beast cub rushed over and directly hit the tree Chu Lue was on. The tree, which was as thick as two people hugging it, instantly collapsed. Chu Lue tiptoed and was about to fly up. However, the steel spine beast seemed to have expected it and directly pounced over. Chapter 1257. If this stomp landed, Chu Luiyue would probably become a pile of minced meat on the spot. Chu Luiyue's mind raced, and a biting cold aura gathered in her palm. However, just as that kick was about to land and Chu Luiyue was about to fight to the death, the adult steel spine beast that was originally standing opposite suddenly rushed over and knocked the steel spine beast to the ground with its head. Bang! The steel spine beast cub's heavy body flew out, and the trees along the way fell one after another. After dragging for a long distance, it finally stopped. There was a deep rut left on the ground, and gravel and broken wood were scattered everywhere. It was a mess. Chu Luiyue was dumbfounded. The steel spine beast cub that was sent flying was also dumbfounded. The surroundings were silent. Chu Luiyue stiffened her neck and looked at the adult steel spine beast standing beside her. What's going on? Why is it helping me? Could it be that the steel spine beast cub isn't its? But soon, she dispelled this guess. Because after the steel spine beast cub came back to its senses, it didn't get up and just wailed. Roar! Chu Luiyue subconsciously looked back and saw it lying on the ground, looking at the adult steel spine beast in disbelief. Its eyes were filled with grievance and pity. Roar, roar. The next moment, Chu Luiyue clearly saw a layer of mist quickly accumulating in the cub's lantern-like eyes. Drip. Drip. Fist-sized teardrops kept falling and hitting the ground, creating small puddles. Chu Luiyue, if it weren't for my parents, it probably wouldn't have such a reaction. However, this cub didn't seem to be very well received. Because when the adult steel spine beast saw it crying, not only did it not comfort it, but it also walked over and kicked it. The cub didn't expect his parents to be so ruthless to him. He didn't pay attention and was kicked out again. The crying stopped abruptly, and then it rolled a few more times. Perhaps it was because the steelback beast was naturally thick-skinned, so it didn't show any mercy this time. The sound of flesh and bones being kicked made Chu Luiyue's eyes twitch. I really didn't expect things to develop in this direction. Roar. The adult steelback beast roared at the cub, sounding a little strict. The cub had suffered a loss and learned its lesson. Finally, it no longer dared to cause trouble. It put away its previous temper and obediently admitted its mistake. The adult steel spine beast roared again. It was unknown what it said, but the cub suddenly raised its head. A look of shock flashed across its eyes. Then, it glanced at Chu Luiyue and shook its head frantically. Roar! The adult steel spine beast let out another roar, causing the cub to pause and immediately become obedient. Chu Luiyue stood aside awkwardly. Why did it seem like he was the one who got into a fight with the other party's child? But after the other party's parents came, not only did they not blame him, they even lectured his child. Wasn't the quality of this adult steel spine beast a little too high? Chu Luiyue originally wanted to leave. However, considering that he couldn't even compare to the cub's speed, he definitely had no chance against this adult steel spine beast. He might as well stay here and see what the other party's attitude was. After waiting for a while, the two steel spine beasts finally finished their conversation. Of course, this conversation was only the adult steel spine beast teaching the cub a lesson. Bang! The adult steel spine beast walked over. The cub followed behind dejectedly. Chu Luiyue's heart tightened. It's here. She subconsciously straightened her back and looked up. It couldn't be helped. The other party was too big. Chu Luiyue could only see the other party's thigh. The adult steel spine beast stood not far in front of her. On the other hand, the cub moved over step by step. Anyone could see that its face was full of reluctance. As if disdaining its slow movements, the adult steel spine beast behind it raised its leg and kicked its butt again. Ugh! The cub almost flew up from the kick and subconsciously turned its head. It originally wanted to protest, but when it met the pair of intimidating eyes, it immediately stopped. After hesitating for a while, it only let out a low sound from its throat, which sounded very pitiful. The adult steel-spine beast was unmoved and raised its head. The cub could only retract its gaze and walk over to Chu Luiyue step by step. The human and beast looked at each other. The cub glared at Chu Luiyue and then lowered its head, aggrieved. Chu Luiyue was still confused when she saw the steel-spine beast cub's head stretch out in front of her. The silver horn was not far in front of her. She could reach it by raising her hand. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment, then suddenly understood something. This is an apology? As soon as this guess appeared, Chu Luiyue subconsciously wanted to deny it. Because this was simply too absurd. One had to know that a moment ago, she was being chased by this steel-spine beast with nowhere to run and almost died at its feet. And now, not only did it stop attacking, but it was also apologizing so humbly. This was simply too shocking. However, other than this reason, Chu Luiyue could not think of any other explanation. She looked at the adult steel-spine beast behind her in a daze. She saw that pair of eyes. Deep, dignified, but with a trace of undetectable nostalgia. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt an extremely familiar feeling in her heart. This steel-spine beast, she opened her mouth, but no words came out. A bold idea quickly flashed through her mind. Perhaps, she had met it long ago? As if sensing her emotional fluctuations, the steel-backed beast finally came forward. It looked into Chu Luiyue's eyes and lowered its head. Unfortunately, it was still too tall. Even if Chu Luiyue raised her hand, she couldn't reach it. After realizing this, it blinked and half-knelt without any hesitation. Then, it moved forward, gentle and dependent. Chu Luiyue felt something rush out from the bottom of her heart. She subconsciously reached out and stroked its head. The steel-spine beast's skin and flesh were very rough and hard. It felt like touching a piece of iron. But for some reason, Chu Luiyue's heart softened. Suddenly, her gaze focused and she saw that there seemed to be a scar on the steel-spine beast's horn. It looked like someone had cut it with a sharp weapon, about half an inch long. It was difficult to notice from afar, but standing close, it was clearly visible. Chu Luiyue subconsciously touched it. In an instant, images rushed out from her mind. She frowned and almost fell to the ground. The steel-spine beast looked at her worriedly. Chu Luiyue closed her eyes and took a step forward, leaning closer to it. The steel-spine beast let her hug it without moving. The cub watched from the side, not knowing what to do. After a long time, Chu Luiyue sighed softly. Ah, Qiong, I'm back. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1258. Ever since she knew that she had lost a part of her memory, Chu Luiyue started to think of all sorts of ways to make herself remember. Previously, she had tried many methods and experienced a lot of torture, but most of the time, it was futile. She couldn't remember no matter how hard she tried. She didn't remember how she came to the Divine Ruins world. She didn't know how she got first place on the Green Cloud roll. She didn't know what she had done in Lingxiao College and why she had forgotten everything in the end. Many times, she even felt that what she did was meaningless. Since the fog was already there and she couldn't see clearly, wouldn't it be better if she didn't look at it? But now, she finally realized that it wasn't meaningless. Because what was behind the fog was the scenery that she couldn't bear to forget. Just like now, she suddenly remembered some of the things that happened in the Beast Park. Even though her memory was still incomplete and not very clear, but it was still very precious to her. Ah, Qiong. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and hid the tears in her eyes. She hugged it tightly, then let go of her hand and took a few steps back. She carefully sized it up and smiled brightly. Ah, Qiong, you've grown up. A few years ago, when they first met in the Beast Park, it wasn't much older than the cub next to it. She didn't expect it to be an adult now and even have a child. Ah, Qiong intimately rubbed against her palm and stood up. Its eyes were filled with joy and excitement. Actually, at the beginning, it wasn't too sure about Chu Liuyue's identity, so it had a cautious attitude. But now, it could finally be at ease. Oh. The cub, who had been ignored for a long time, finally found a chance to interrupt. Its eyes moved back and forth between Chu Liyue and its mother, full of confusion and confusion. Obviously, it had been ignorant until now. It was clearly its mother's son. Why did its mother treat this human who suddenly appeared better than it did itself? Chu Liyue looked at its jealous and angry expression and couldn't help but laugh. Don't worry, I won't snatch your mother. The cub's eyes were full of suspicion. Not snatching? Then why was its mother so good to it? And she even hugged her mother just now. Not to mention that her mother had hid it for the first time because of her. It was very angry, and the consequences were very serious. Thus, it went to its mother's side and rubbed itself against her like a spoiled child, looking at her with eager eyes. Let her go. Let her go. Let her go. Bang! Its body was once again kicked away by its mother. Roar! I can't live like this anymore, woo-woo. Chu Liuyue's eyebrows twitched slightly. Ah, Qiong, you're a mother now. Why hasn't your temper changed at all? He's your son after all, ao. Exactly. To think that even this human would say something like that. Mother sure is ruthless. Ah, Qiong glanced at it. It quickly shut its mouth, not daring to say another word. It finally understood that this human was its natural nemesis. Unfortunately, her mother was too biased towards her, so she definitely couldn't do anything today. We'll wait until we have a chance to counterattack. Seeing that it had finally calmed down, Qiong looked at Chu Liyue. How would this little fellow understand? If it wasn't for this woman in front of it, it would have ceased to exist long ago. Chu Liyue laughed. Let's go. Let's go and see your current home. Late at night. The moon was in the middle of the sky. Elder Yu, who was sitting on a certain mountain, kept the Xian formation in front of him and looked up. It's already so late. I wonder how Chu Yu is doing now. Thinking of this, he looked towards the distant mountains. In the quiet night, other than the occasional wind blowing through the mountains, there was no other sound. Everything was the same as usual. Strange. Elder Yu stroked his beard. Logically speaking, when a stranger enters the beast park, it will definitely attract the attacks of many magical beasts. It shouldn't be so quiet. This situation was really strange. But he was sure that Chu Yu wasn't in trouble. Otherwise, the Xian formation would have already acted strangely. Could it be that he found a secluded place to hide? Suddenly, he clapped his hands. TSK, how could I forget that he still has a contracted divine beast? It was said that it was a red-tailed phoenix with a very pure bloodline. With such a divine beast keeping watch, ordinary magical beasts really wouldn't find trouble with him. This saved Chu Yu a lot of trouble. Elder Yu couldn't help but laugh. Let's hope that tomorrow can still be so peaceful. In this beast park, there was an existence that wasn't afraid of the red-tailed phoenix. That night, with Ah Qiong's help, Chu Liyue could finally rest peacefully. In the cave where they lived, Chu Liyue and Ah Qiong chatted briefly about some things. Then, she leaned against a huge rock alone and rested her head on her arm, planning to sleep. Ah Qiong also knew that she was very tired today, so she didn't disturb her and stayed by her side to guard her. But Chu Liyue didn't sleep well. In her dream, there were some familiar and unfamiliar scenes. Most of them were related to the beast park. Of course, there was also Ah Qiong. Speaking of which, they could be considered to be fated. When Chu Liyue first came to the beast park, the first magical beast she encountered was it. At that time, it was being chased by other divine beasts. While fleeing in a sorry state, it met Chu Liyue. She helped it escape and even gave it a name. But there was no contract. Chu Liyue thought. At that time, she had already contracted Dumpling. Suddenly, Chu Liyue opened her eyes. Dumpling had also followed her to the Divine Ruins world. She actually never thought of asking it what it still remembered. Digression. I apologize to everyone again. Yesterday, there was a blunder. I originally planned to refund everyone's Xiaoxiang dollars, but because there were many subscription platforms, Hongxiu, QQ, and other readers couldn't refund them one by one. So, in the end, I replaced the repeated chapter with today's first update. Those who have subscribed can continue to read as usual. I'm really sorry for causing trouble for everyone. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1259. Sensing the movement on Chu Liuyue's side, both of them looked over. Ah Qiong looked at her worriedly. Chu Liyue gave it a reassuring look. Don't worry, I'm fine. As she said that, she rubbed her temples. That's right, why didn't I think of it before? When she was in her teens, she had already made a contract with her own magical beast. At that time, Dumpling was only a 9-colored heavenly pheasant, but at that time, it was already considered one of the most powerful magical beasts in the entire Tianling dynasty. After she successfully made the contract, her father even held a palace banquet to celebrate. From then on, Dumpling had been following her. And coming to the Divine Ruins world was something that happened later. Logically speaking, Dumpling should have come with her at that time. But after so long, Dumpling had never mentioned this. Dumpling. Chu Liyue called out in her heart, but there was no response. Only then did she remember that Dumpling had stayed at Thousand Wine Mountain and was not by her side now. She frowned. It seemed that she would have to wait a month before she could clarify this matter. She sat in a daze for a while before lying down again. This time, she finally fell asleep in a daze. While Chu Liyue spent the night in the Beast Park with complicated feelings, the people outside were also not calm. Thousand Wine Mountain. On the top of the mountain, beside the spring, there were a few figures standing. Standing in the middle was Elder Bo Yan, beside him were Elder Ouyang and Shang Yusen. Is this what you've done? Elder Bo Yan looked around and asked faintly. Even though he had heard them talk about it before, when he saw this scene, he could not help but feel angry. These people really knew how to cause trouble. The punishment from before was really too light. Cough. Elder Ouyang coughed. Actually, it's mainly the surrounding trees and rocks that were destroyed, but there's no problem with the spring, Elder Bo Yan sneered. If there was a problem with the spring, do you think I would still be here talking to you about this? Elder Ouyang shut his mouth awkwardly. Shang Yusen was still relatively relaxed. Bo Yan, since this has already happened, there's no point in talking about it anymore, right? What's more, those who should be punished have already been punished. None of us escaped punishment, right? Why don't we start right away and restore this place as soon as possible? Elder Bo Yan gave him a warning look. There will be no next time. Although the 10,000 Wine Mountain had been sealed, it could only be repaired at night. That was why they had waited until now to come. As he spoke, Elder Bo Yan walked to the side of the spring and carefully examined it. The mouth of the spring, which gurgled during the day, became very calm at night. Under the calm surface of the water, streaks of silver tianlei gathered and intertwined with each other. I already said that there's nothing wrong with the spring. Shang Yusen laughed. You don't trust me and Ouyang? At that time, we were very careful. Elder Bo Yan looked away. This spring has great implications. It's best to be cautious. After all, they had caused such a huge commotion, so of course he would be worried. Elder Ouyang nodded in agreement. Bo Yan is right. For this thing, our entire academy has put in a lot of effort. We don't dare to have any problems. Calculating the time, it seems that it's almost time, right? Elder Bo Yan shook his head. It was originally going to end, but some time ago, Chiyu came and caused a ruckus, causing the number of tianlei in here to decrease. The time was delayed again. Fortunately, he didn't take much away at that time. After some time, it will be able to recover. Elder Ouyang sighed. In the end, this Chu Yu really knows how to cause trouble. Fortunately, you threw him into the Beast Park this time. You have to polish his character properly. Otherwise, what would happen if he was always so bold and arrogant? Elder Bo Yen nodded. I think so too. Chu Yu had a precious treasure in his hands, so it was inevitable that he would attract the envy and jealousy of many people. If he didn't improve his strength as soon as possible, no one knew what would happen in the future. After all, it was impossible for any so-called backer to protect him from afar all the time. In the end, becoming stronger was the most important thing. I wonder how that kid is doing in the Beast Park now. As Elder Ouyang spoke, he glanced in the direction of the Beast Park. He probably won't be able to sleep on the first night, right? Elder Bo Yen laughed. He has a red-tailed phoenix. Don't worry too much. If he didn't know about this contracted divine beast, he wouldn't have dared to put Chu Yu in the Beast Park for a month. Suddenly, there seemed to be a sound coming from the spring. Elder Bo Yen immediately lowered his head to look, but only saw a shallow ripple spreading from within. He stared for a while and only retracted his gaze after confirming that there was nothing unusual. Let's begin. The three of them separated and began to repair the area they were in charge of. In the spring, several tianlei flickered quietly. A streak of red flashed across the ink-like water. A night passed in the blink of an eye. When Chu Luyue woke up, the sky was already bright. Cheong was guarding outside the cave, but the cub wasn't there. It seemed to have gone out. Hearing the movement, Cheong turned around. Chu Luyue got up and walked outside. She stretched her muscles and bones, and heard the sound of bones cracking. She looked forward with a smile on her lips. This place is still the same as before. It's a good place to cultivate. Cheong looked at her curiously, as if she was asking for her opinion. Chu Luyue smiled. Cheong, I'm going into seclusion from today onwards. I'll have to trouble you to guard me. Cheong nodded. Chu Luyue felt much more at ease. She turned around and returned to the cave. Yes, she was preparing to break through to the peak of the 7th level. Ever since she recovered her Tianjing Yuan Meridian, her cultivation speed had increased by a lot. After coming to Lingxiao College, the rich force of heaven and earth was like adding wings to a tiger. In addition, she had experienced all these before. Hence, even if there was no one to guide her, she could still break through smoothly. Now, she only needed a relatively quiet and stable environment. Some of the magical beasts in the Beast Park were reared in the past, while some were brought back by the elders and students from outside. The number of divine beasts was not small. If Chu Luyue was alone, she would definitely not choose to break through at this time and place. But now that Cheong was here, she could be more at ease. These divine beasts were afraid of each other. Usually, they wouldn't invade each other and lived in harmony. She basically wouldn't have any problems cultivating in Cheong's cave. She sat cross-legged, her shoulders drooping naturally, and her hands on her knees. Then, she closed her eyes and started to absorb the force of heaven and earth around her quickly. Streaks of energy rushed into her body. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1260. It was peaceful in the school. Elder Bo Yen kept the incident on 10,000 Wine Mountain under wraps. Other than the few of them, no one else knew about it. Everything was the same as usual. Even the news of Chu Luyue being locked up in the Beast Park was kept under wraps by Elder Bo Yen. On one hand, the elders in charge of patrolling knew that those who were sent there must have done something. The less they said, the less mistakes they would make. On the other hand, they were not people who liked to gossip. They knew that Bo Yen and Wanjing did not want this incident to spread, so they kept quiet. Hence, even if Chu Luyue did not appear in front of everyone, no one suspected anything. In everyone's eyes, she was busy cultivating with Rongxiu. It was normal for her to stay in Jiuheng Mountain. Days like this passed for several days in a row. Fifth brother, I heard that the mystic teachers and elders are having a class together in the afternoon. On one of the mountain peaks, Luo Shishir and Zhuosheng had finished cultivating. They wanted to visit Luo Yanlin since they had not seen him for a long time. Unfortunately, Luo Yanlin was not around, so they went to look for Luo Yanming. Luo Shishir asked as she poured tea for the other two. A smile appeared on Luo Yanming's face as she nodded. That's right. Master said that we have always been sparring with each other. After a long time, we already know each other's styles. It's boring, so we discussed with the other elders to have a class together. This matter was actually not uncommon in the Spirit Firmament Academy. Not only mystic teachers, but martial artists and celestial physician also had such activities from time to time. To put it nicely, it was a friendly exchange. To put it bluntly, it was a battle between each other. Most of the students in the school were favored by the heavens. They had some pride in their bones and were very competitive. Of course, the elders also had a similar desire to win. When the elders had a class together, they would often personally spar with each other and demonstrate to the students. This way, the students could learn a lot and increase their strength through a certain amount of competition. Cultivation, in the end, was for the sake of becoming stronger, for the sake of establishing an invincible position in battle. There were many benefits to this, so the elders and students were happy to do so. Who are the elders that have come? Luo Shishir asked curiously. Luo Yanming thought for a moment. Other than our master, there are 3 other elders. Oh, 7th madam is here too. Does that mean 4th brother will be there too? Yes. In fact, there were many people who wanted to learn from 4th brother. Luo Yanming said with envy and admiration. Luo Yanlin had always been in the top 10 on the mystic cultivator ranking and was considered an absolute leader among the students. There were countless people who wanted to challenge him. After all, it was possible to learn more and faster by fighting with a powerhouse than by building a car behind closed doors. I wonder when I'll be able to catch up to 4th brother. Luo Yanlin said with some emotion. Luo Shishir comforted him. 5th brother's talent is outstanding. He will definitely be as outstanding as 4th brother in the future. Luo Yanlin shook his head. A few years ago, when 4th brother first entered the academy, he was about the same age as me. Within a month of coming to the academy, 4th brother had already made it onto the Azure Sky Roll. As for me, I'm still far from it. He usually didn't say much about this, but he actually cared a lot about it. As disciples of the Luo clan, it was inevitable that they would compare themselves to each other. Luo Shishir wanted to say something but hesitated. Luo Yanlin laughed self-deprecatingly. Shishir, you don't have to think of anything to comfort me. I know it in my heart. In our Luo clan, the most talented mystic cultivator is 4th brother. Haven't we known this since we were young? I'm only saying this because I want to work hard and cultivate so that I won't be too far behind. Luo Shishir saw his sincere expression and knew that he was speaking from the bottom of his heart, so she didn't say anything else. Father and the elders have always praised 5th brother for his open-mindedness and that he has a bright future. Luo Yanming smiled. Actually, that Lin Qifei is not bad. If there's a chance this time, I'll definitely have a good spar with her. Zhuosheng patted his shoulder hard. I support you. There's just one thing. Have you seen Chuyu recently? Luo Yanming asked. That night, we agreed to have a chat when we had time. But it's been a few days, and I haven't even seen his shadow. Compared to Lin Qifei, he actually wanted to spar with Chuyu more. This was because when Elder Huafeng mentioned Lin Qifei, his reaction was not as big as when he mentioned Chuyu. This made Luo Yanming suspect that Chuyu's talent in this aspect might be even stronger than Lin Qifei's. We haven't seen him either. Luo Shishir shook her head. He might be busy cultivating with senior brother Rongxiu in Jiuheng Mountain. Anyway, I haven't heard any news about senior brother Rongxiu these few days. Probably, Luo Yanming didn't think too much about it. Then I'll wait for him to come out before I look for him. Dong! The sound of a bell rang. Luo Yanming stood up and looked in a certain direction. It's time for class. I'll be leaving first. Let's talk another day. With that, he tapped his toes and quickly left. Luo Shishir and Zhuoxing didn't stay any longer and quickly left. When Luo Yanming arrived, there were already many people gathered halfway up the mountain. Obviously, these were all people who were going to class together today. Some of them looked familiar to him. They were all Elder Huafeng's students, but he didn't know most of them. They were probably the other elder's students. Luo Yanming quickly looked around and found that his fourth brother, Luo Yanlin, hadn't appeared yet, so he found a few familiar friends and went to meet them. Because the elders hadn't arrived yet, the atmosphere was still relatively free and casual. Everyone stood in groups of 3 or 5 and talked about something from time to time. Of course, most of them were about today's class. This time, I want to challenge senior brother Luo Yanlin. I wonder if he will agree, him? I think it's better to forget it. How can our standards be enough? Isn't it important to participate? It's a rare opportunity to fight with senior brother Luo Yanlin. It's good that you know. In my opinion, instead of placing all your hopes on someone who's unlikely to agree, why don't you change to someone who's not as strong and has less requirements? Hey, isn't that Jiang Jiwan? She's here today too. Her master, Elder Dan Qing, is also one of the elders in today's class. Isn't it normal for her to come? But then again, she's not a bad opponent to challenge. I think you have an ulterior motive? Why do you care? A fair and virtuous woman is a gentleman's mate. Once, she was infatuated with senior brother Rong Xiu and ignored everyone else. But now, senior brother Rong Xiu already had a princess. She should look at the others, right? All kinds of words came, making Jiang Jiwan's already depressed mood even worse. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1261. She hadn't received any reply since she sent the letter a few days ago. Logically speaking, after such a long time, the letter should have reached the Immortal Water Mausoleum by now. But for some reason, there wasn't any movement from the other side. If it was in the past, even if her father hadn't found anything, he would have sent her a letter to comfort her. This time, it was really strange. For the past 2 days, she even started to have insomnia at night. She couldn't sleep well, so she didn't have much energy during the day and looked especially haggard. Pfft! A toad lusting after a swan's meat. Liang Xiaoxiao, who was standing at the side, also heard those words and couldn't help but curse in a low voice. How dare they dream of gaining your favor, Ziyuan? They're daydreaming. Even if you're not the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower, you're still not someone they can dream of. Don't you think so, Ziyuan? As she spoke, she looked at Jiang Jiwan. But when she looked, she realized that Jiang Jiwan didn't seem to be listening to her. Her eyes weren't focused, and her expression was dazed. It seemed like she was in a daze. Liang Xiaoxiao frowned, and a trace of dissatisfaction flashed through her heart. She was praising and comforting her out of goodwill, but she wasn't listening at all. Ziyuan. Liang Xiaoxiao's expression quickly returned to normal, and she called Jiang Jiwan twice. Jiang Jiwan came back to her senses. What's wrong? Liang Xiaoxiao felt even more uncomfortable, and she smiled. Nothing, what are you thinking about? Why are you so engrossed? Jiang Jiwan lowered her eyes. I miss Daddy a little. I haven't been back for so long. I wonder how things are at the Immortal Water Mausoleum. Liang Xiaoxiao almost laughed out loud. Miss Daddy? Others might believe Jiang Jiwan's words, but she didn't take half a word seriously. They'd known each other for a long time. In the years before Jiang Jiwan entered the academy, she spent most of her time at the Immortal Water Mausoleum. She didn't even have the chance to go to the Yuntian Tower because her father kept urging her to cultivate diligently. Jiang Jiwan's father doted on her, but this doting came with conditions. If Jiang Jiwan wasn't outstanding enough, she wouldn't have had everything she had today. The Immortal Water Mausoleum, Jiang Ji-won herself said she was tired of staying there. Ever since she entered the Spirit Firmament Academy, she wished she could stay here forever, free and unrestrained. She had never said anything like missing her father and home. It was obvious that this was just a casual excuse. With the other party's attitude, Liang Xiaoxiao naturally didn't want to be snubbed. Ziyuan, TSS, Ziyuan, S, since you want to, why don't you ask your master for a leave of absence? Ziyuan, if it were any other time, Jiang Ziyuan would have immediately noticed Liang Xiaoxiao's displeasure and coaxed her to ease their relationship. I'll go after today's class is over. Liang Xiaoxiao almost laughed out of anger when she heard Jiang Jiwon's words. She lost interest in continuing the conversation. After waiting for a while, she found an excuse and went to the side to chat with the others. Jiang Jiwon's mind was a little muddle-headed, so she didn't even care about this. Not long after, the elders arrived. Other than Elder Huafeng, Elder Dan Qing, 7th Madam, and Elder Xu Feng, there was also Elder Huafeng. The students quieted down when they saw them arrive. They looked at them with excitement and curiosity. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that when these few elders gathered together, it was definitely a top-notch lineup. There were hundreds of elders in Lingxiao College, and almost 1/3 of them were mystic masters. There would always be differences in strength among cultivators. The elders were no exception. And these people were all recognized by everyone as the most powerful peak existences. The students were naturally excited. The 4 elders first formed groups of 2, and each of them carried out a battle. After the demonstration, he gave the students some time to study on their own. Finally, it was time for the students to challenge each other. This was also the segment that everyone paid the most attention to. Many students quickly chose their own opponents to spar with. There were also some people who came to look for Jiang Ji-won, but they were all rejected by her. After the 5th young man was rejected, he didn't leave like the previous people. He only smiled at Jiang Ji-won and said, "Ziyuan, we've known each other for 2 years. You should know how I feel about you. In the past, I didn't say much because I knew that your heart belonged to someone else. But now, it's impossible between you and him. Why can't you consider me?" Hearing that Rong Xiao was involved, Jiang Ji-won finally raised her head. She frowned and stared at him. She had some impression of this man. The relationship between them was still all right, but that was all. If he could speak properly, she would still be able to politely reply to him. Unfortunately, the last 2 sentences that he said just now really made her feel disgusted. She suppressed the anger in her heart and said, "If you like him, you like him. If you don't like him, you don't like him. This kind of thing can't be forced." Seeing that she was still like this, the man couldn't help but reach out to pull her. Jiang Ji-won immediately dodged, and a trace of disgust flashed across her eyes. This expression immediately made the man angry out of humiliation. He said in a deep voice, "Senior Rong Xiao already has a princess. No matter what you do, can you take back the position of princess?" Jiang Ji-won also exploded and couldn't help but raise her voice. "That woman is inferior to me in every aspect. What right does she have to occupy the position of princess consort? That position was originally mine." Chapter 1262. The man's expression changed when he heard this. Jiang Ji-won also regained her senses, and her heart skipped a beat. How could she say such things in front of everyone? Even if that was what she was thinking, or even if many people were thinking the same thing, she shouldn't have said such things. The surroundings quieted down. Some of the people standing nearby looked over. Their expressions were different, and their gazes were subtle. Jiang Ji-won felt like there was a dagger at her back, and she wanted to find a hole to hide in. There were some things that others could say, but she couldn't say. Previously, she had been hinting that she was the one who had been robbed of her love. Many people didn't know much about the situation at the Yuntian Tower, so they believed her words and thought that she had been wronged. They sympathized with her and loved her. But if she said it out loud, the nature of the situation would change completely. Wasn't she telling everyone that she had always regarded the position of princess consort as her own? I didn't mean that. Jiang Ji-won panicked and wanted to explain. But after stammering for a long time, she couldn't come up with a reasonable excuse. The more nervous she was, the more she didn't know how to salvage the situation. Senior Jiang Ji-won. Right at this moment, an indifferent and cold voice sounded out, breaking this stiff and cold atmosphere. Jiang Ji-won immediately turned her head and saw that the person who spoke was a young man who looked about 20 years old. He was wearing a green robe, and he was tall and handsome. Just by standing there, he looked like an ink painting. His eyes were much lighter than the average person's, and it made him look more distant. You are Lin Qifei? Jiang Ji-won remembered that she had seen this face before. If she remembered correctly, this person was the first one to enter the master roll of honor among the new students. At the same time, he was the young master of the Lin family at Grotto Heaven Cliff. Back then, Chu Lue disguised himself and went to the Yuntian Tower with them. Thinking of this, Jiang Ziyuan felt a little annoyed in her heart. She loathed everything related to that woman. Why are you looking for me? Jiang Ji-won's tone was obviously much colder. Lin Qifei didn't seem to mind and smiled. There is one thing. I heard that senior martial sister Jiang Ji-won's cultivation as a mystic cultivator is quite outstanding. Qifei would like to ask for guidance. Is that possible? So it was because of this. Jiang Ji-won sneered in her heart, but on the surface, she looked indifferent. Junior brother Lin, you've just ascended to the Azure Sky role, so it's inevitable that you're young and impetuous. It was understandable that he wanted to find someone to challenge. However, you have to carefully choose your candidates. There are many mystic cultivators present who can spar with you. You don't have to waste your time with me. These words sounded polite on the surface, but in reality, they were mocking Lin Qifei for not being strong enough and overestimating himself. As long as one had a temper, it was inevitable that they would get angry. However, Lin Qifei's expression was normal when he heard this, as if he didn't care. Senior martial sister Jiang Ji-won is right. People who are weak indeed shouldn't try to compete with people who are much stronger than them. Otherwise, the one who will be humiliated and injured in the end will be themselves. Jiang Ji-won's expression changed. This was blatantly scolding her. Even if one used their toes to think, they would know that Lin Qifei was hinting at what had happened to the people of Cloud Heaven Tower that day. She had lost to that Chu Lue several times in a row. What are you trying to say? Jiang Ji-won had lost her patience. Lin Qifei smiled. What I wanted to say was what I said just now. Did senior martial sister Jiang Ji-won not hear me clearly? He raised his chin slightly, and his eyes gradually turned cold. I wanted to ask senior martial sister Jiang Ji-won to spar with me, but senior martial sister Jiang didn't seem willing to agree. However, I don't think the gap between me and senior martial sister Jiang is as big as you think. Jiang Ji-won was so angry that she laughed. What did you say? Did he mean that she was arrogant and conceited? Junior martial brother Lin, do you think that you're invincible just because you're on the Azure Cloud roll? Don't forget that there are dozens of people between you and me in that regard. At this moment, the commotion had attracted the attention of many people. Most people thought that Lin Qifei was a little arrogant. He was very outstanding, but Jiang Ji-won had been in the academy for several years, and she was publicly recognized as one of the best. She was ranked at the top of the Azure Cloud roll. He actually said that, wasn't he thinking too highly of himself? However, Lin Qifei didn't seem to care about the opinions of the people around him. He looked at Jiang Ji-won and said, Senior martial sister Jiang, if you don't believe me, you can give it a try. This was a challenge that couldn't be any more direct. No, it could be said that he was provoking her. Are you sure? Jiang Ji-won sized up Lin Qifei and narrowed her eyes. Junior martial brother Lin, it's good to be bold, but sometimes, if you don't know how to restrain yourself, you'll bring trouble to yourself. I'll give you one last piece of advice, you're on your own. Lin Jifei glanced at her, and the corners of his mouth hooked up without a smile. Thank you for your advice, Senior Martial Sister Jiang Jiwon. My courage is really nothing compared to yours. He spoke slowly, enunciating each and every word clearly. After all, you even dared to distort the truth in front of so many people. What do I not dare to do? Jiang Jiwon's heart sank. She tried to control her anger and forced a smile. Junior Marshal Brother Lin, what do you mean by that? I don't understand. The position of the princess consort is decided through a competition. That day, you lost from the beginning to the end, but you didn't know that the princess consort is inferior to you in every aspect. Senior Martial Sister Jiang Jiwon, how did you say that? With every word Lin Qifei said, Jiang Jiwon's face turned paler. By the end, her face was pale and her body was trembling. You. She opened her mouth, but couldn't say anything to refute him. Because what Lin Qifei said was true. She lost to Chu Luiyue in more than one aspect. Seeing that Jiang Jiwon didn't refute him, the crowd gradually realized something and looked at each other. Most of them didn't know much about what happened at the Yuntian Tower. Occasionally, they heard some news, but it was mostly from Jiang Jiwon and the others. Why was Lin Qifei's words so different from what Jiang Jiwon said before? Senior Martial Sister Jiang Jiwon. Since you lost, you can also say that you won. Then. Even if I lose, it shouldn't be a big problem, right? Lin Qifei asked. Why don't we have a competition to see who will win? Beast Park. Everything was calm. Elder Yu looked in a certain direction and frowned in confusion. It has been a few days, why is there still no news from Chu Yu's side? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1263. He originally thought that it would be good enough if Chu Yu could survive one night. Who knew that Chu Yu had not sent out any signal for help until now? And from the situation of the Xian formation in the Beast Park, he was indeed fine and seemed to be staying in one place all the time. Could it be that he found an excellent hiding place? Elder Yu thought to himself. But the mythical beasts in the Beast Park were not so good-tempered. For some reason, the mythical beasts did not cause any trouble until today. He thought for a while and decided to wait a little longer. If Chu Yu could really survive a month in here, then he would really have a whole new level of respect for Chu Yu. Chu Luiyue, who was in the cave, had almost forgotten about the passage of time. The surrounding force of heaven and earth surged into her body and flowed through her limbs and bones before finally gathering in her dantian. As the surrounding force of heaven and earth increased, the 7 lines on the water droplet became brighter and brighter. But sensing this movement, Chu Luiyue was unable to relax. Because, according to her original calculations, she should have broken through a few days ago. But for some reason, all kinds of force of heaven and earth were circulating in her dantian, and there was no movement until today. Chu Luiyue was puzzled. Breaking through to the peak of rank 7 was not a difficult thing for her. According to her past experience, she would be able to break through in less than a day. But now, the situation was developing in an unknown direction. After thinking for a while, Chu Luiyue decided to wait patiently and continued to devour the surrounding force of heaven and earth. After some time, finally, there was a slight fluctuation in her dantian. Then, a vigorous force surged out from within. This force had a trace of a familiar aura. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a while before she realized that this force seemed to be the force of heaven and earth that she had inherited from Taizu of the northern underworld. Ever since she had devoured all of this force of heaven and earth, it had quietly entered the water droplet and did not cause any movement. Chu Luiyue did not expect that this force of heaven and earth would suddenly surge out at this moment. After a long period of nourishment and refinement in the water droplet, this force of heaven and earth had become extremely pure. In an instant, it surged towards Chu Luiyue's body. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Then, she felt waves of piercing pain all over her body. She was startled, but she immediately understood something. This force of heaven and earth was going to help her break through to rank 8. After realizing this, Chu Luiyue made a prompt decision and began to guide the force of heaven and earth. Although she did not know why this happened, it was a rare opportunity. Since she could directly break through to rank 8, why not give it a try? Under Chu Luiyue's intentional control, the originally messy and chaotic force started to flow into her Yuan meridian in an orderly manner. The Tianjing Yuan meridian's endurance was much stronger than the Daijing Yuan meridian's. Hence, after the initial piercing pain, Chu Luiyue's body quickly adapted to the strong impact. During this process, some of the power had also silently fused into her flesh and bones. The force of heaven and earth continued to surge out of the water droplet. After all, it was the force of heaven and earth left behind by a god-rank powerhouse. Its power could not be underestimated. This force of heaven and earth was stored in the water droplet. Chu Luiyue had never paid much attention to it. It was only now that she began to devour this force of heaven and earth that she realized how terrifying it was. As she continued to absorb this force of heaven and earth into her body, her aura began to strengthen rapidly. If anyone else was here, they would be shocked to see this scene. Because Chu Luiyue's speed of devouring the force of heaven and earth was too shocking. When ordinary cultivators tried to break through to rank 8, they would need to make sufficient preparations. To put it bluntly, they had to accumulate enough force of heaven and earth to break through to rank 8. For a martial artist, the higher they broke through, the more experience they needed. In fact, the force of heaven and earth that Chu Luiyue was mobilizing had far exceeded that of ordinary cultivators. Chu Luiyue also realized this point, so she could only continue to circulate the force of heaven and earth. She had long known that when the water droplet in her body wanted to break through, she would need to spend more force than others. Early stage to middle stage to peak, at least they were at the same stage, so it was not that difficult. However, every time he advanced in rank, the situation would become very troublesome. Not to mention other things, just the last time she broke through to rank 7, she had spent a lot of effort. She did not expect that the endless force of heaven and earth that she devoured would come in handy during this breakthrough. Crack. A soft sound was heard. The 7th line on the water droplet finally became as bright as the other lines. However, this was only the beginning. Chu Luiyue held her breath and did not dare to be careless. She continued to increase her strength and urged the force of heaven and earth to circulate. Boom! A loud sound suddenly came from the sky. Dark clouds gathered and the wind howled. The sky quickly darkened. Ah Cheong, who was guarding the cave entrance, looked up and then turned back as if she sensed something. Is she going to break through consecutively? At the same time, Elder Yu, who was a few mountains away, heard the commotion and was also very surprised. He frowned slightly. Why is the sky turning dark so quickly? No. Suddenly, his expression changed. That kid is going to break through. He tapped the tip of his foot and immediately flew in that direction. Breaking through in the Beast Park. Is this kid courting death? Digression, midnight has begun. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1264. It was dark between heaven and earth. The wind swept the clouds away and whistled past. Such a situation caused the magical beasts in the Beast Park to become restless. Some of them even started to move toward the mountain where Chu Luiyue was. The wind was chilling, and the air was cold. However, Chu Luiyue, who was preparing to break through in the cave, was unaware of all this. After breaking through to the peak of level 7, Chu Luiyue did not stop at all. She continued to devour the surrounding energy of heaven and earth. Then, it merged with the energy that surged out from the water droplets in her body. Finally, it seeped into every inch of her muscles, blood, and bones. Her body was like a black hole. No matter how much energy entered her body, she could easily accommodate it. Of course, there were also benefits after breaking through to the peak of level 7. The speed at which she circulated her energy became faster. Chu Luiyue closed her eyes tightly. Her mind was clear. There was only one thought in her mind: to break through to level 8. Outside the cave, Ah Cheong, who was in charge of guarding the cave, scratched the ground uneasily. It looked at the surroundings. It was already evening. In addition, Chu Luiyue was about to break through. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and the light was even dimmer. Many things could not be seen clearly. As far as the eye could see, it could only see the dark, undulating mountain range. Some soft sounds came from all directions. A hint of alertness flashed across Ah Cheong's eyes. When Elder Yu Yu arrived, the first thing he saw was such a scene. A huge adult steel-spine beast was standing in front of a cave. It was majestic and vigilant. Its reaction was extremely sensitive. The moment Elder Yu Yu arrived, it sensed his aura and looked up. Elder Yu Yu's heart skipped a beat. This steel-spine beast was looking at him with eyes full of hostility and warning. It was as if it would fight to the death if he took another step forward. Elder Yu Yu frowned. This steel-spine beast. What's wrong with it? He had been in the beast park for quite some time. The magical beasts here were more or less familiar with him. Under normal circumstances, both parties were more polite when they met. It was rare for them to quarrel. But this time, this steel-spine beast took such a stance when it saw him. It was really strange. It looked as if it was protecting its cub, but the commotion came from inside the cave. Logically speaking, the one inside should be Chu Yu. Elder Yu Yu was puzzled, but he did not dare to act rashly. The demonic beasts in the beast park were usually quite restrained. However, they were not contracted. The pride and wildness in their bones determined that they were definitely not easy to deal with. At this moment, some strange noises came from the surroundings. Elder Yu Yu looked serious. There were quite a few magical beasts in the forest, and they were all approaching this place. Their target was the cave. This made him even more certain of his guess. Chu Yu must be in the cave, preparing to break through. When cultivators were breaking through, they would often draw upon the energy of heaven and earth. However, in the beast park, there were a large number of high-level magical beasts and even mythical beasts. They had a natural thirst for power. Under normal circumstances, they would restrain themselves. But magical beasts who were preparing to break through could activate a large amount of energy. Unfortunately, they were very weak now. Therefore, in the eyes of the magical beasts, they became a piece of fat meat. At this time, many magical beasts would fight for this piece of fat meat. Chu Yu breaking through in this place at this time, wasn't this putting himself in danger? Elder Yu Yu was anxious. But at the same time, the steel-spine beast's reaction made him even more puzzled. Could it be, it was protecting Chu Yu? As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, Elder Yu Yu subconsciously shook his head. How could it be? Adult steel-spine beasts were magical beasts. They were ruthless, cold, and merciless. They were especially wary of humans. He had stayed in the beast park for so long. It was difficult for him to even get close to them. Not to mention Chu Yu, who had just arrived a few days ago. But looking at the steel-spine beast, other than this, he could not think of any other explanation. After thinking about it, Elder Yu Yu decided to wait and see. If something really happened, it would not be too late for him to take action. The people outside did not know about the undercurrent in the beast park. Halfway up the mountain, Lin Qifei's words left Jiang Jiwan with no way out. Countless pairs of eyes looked over. Their gazes were different. Jiang Jiwan's heart was filled with resentment toward Lin Qifei. He did it on purpose. Okay. I promise you. Jiang Jiwan raised her voice. Lin Qifei smiled. Then I'll have to trouble you, senior sister Jiang Jiwan. After saying that, the two of them prepared to start the battle. The onlookers looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with unconcealable excitement and curiosity. Elder Huafeng and the others also noticed the situation here and looked over. Xu Feng, your new disciple is quite arrogant. Elder Dan Qing said with an indifferent expression. You've only been in the academy for less than 3 months, yet you already have such courage. Your courage is truly commendable. How could Elder Shu Feng not hear the sarcasm and disdain in those words? Instead, he was not angry. Instead, he laughed. Haha. Although Ji Fei usually doesn't talk much, he is indeed a person with a temperament. If you want to become strong, you have to have the courage to challenge the strong, right? However, this child has always been steady. He usually won't do things that he isn't sure of. Today's battle. Actually, I'm also very curious about who will win. Elder Dan Qing's face darkened. He sneered in his heart. Lin Qifei had a domineering personality. Now, even Shu Feng had become like this. How could a brat who had just entered the azure cloud role be a match for Jiang Jiwan? He flicked his sleeves and said coldly, "It's good for young people to suffer more and suffer more setbacks." Elder Shu Feng raised his eyebrows and pretended not to hear anything. He changed the topic. Actually, that's not important. After all, this is just a small competition. The most important thing is for everyone to learn from each other and improve their strength. On the other hand, Jiang Jiwan. Dan Qing, I saw that she has been in a daze today. She doesn't seem to be in a good state. Elder Dan Qing frowned. In fact, he had noticed this as well. Based on his understanding of Jiang Jiwan, she should have encountered some trouble. Coupled with what Lin Qifei had said just now, her expression looked even worse. Actually, everyone has times when they are haggard and tired. This is normal. But no matter what, there are some things that shouldn't be said carelessly. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1265. Elder Danqing's heart seemed to be clenched by something. He turned his head and looked at Elder Shu Feng with a frown. Rong Xiu isn't here, but that doesn't mean he didn't hear those words. Elder Shu Feng didn't seem to notice the warning in the other party's eyes as he spoke leisurely. That princess consort was personally chosen by Rong Xiu, which is enough to show his feelings. Moreover, when Rong Xiu returned to the academy, he admitted that the princess consort was the person he truly loved. If he knew that Jiang Jiwan had slandered that princess consort in front of so many people and even claimed that the position of princess consort was hers. With his personality, he wouldn't let this matter go so easily. Dan Qing, what do you think? Elder Danqing's expression changed slightly. Rong Xiu was tough and ruthless. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to ascend to the position of the Holy Sun and take charge of the Yuntian Tower in just a few years. If he really wanted to pursue this matter, he was afraid that Jiang Ziyuan's end would not be any better. In fact, in the past few years, Jiang Jiwan had deliberately made her relationship with Rong Xiu sound very ambiguous. It wasn't the first time that outsiders misunderstood. However, Rong Xiu was no longer in the academy at that time, so he naturally didn't care. However, it was different now. Rong Xiu was here, and if he wanted to know anything, he would definitely know everything. Elder Danqing's heart slowly sank. Others might not know, but as Jiang Jiwan's master, he knew best what Rong Xiu's attitude toward her. What childhood sweethearts, what elder's agreement, in fact, it was all just Jiang Jiwan's wishful thinking. Now, the princess consort was living well in the Yuntian Tower. How could she allow others to slander her? I will deal with this matter. Elder Danqing said in a low voice. I won't trouble others to teach my own student. Elder Shu Feng knew that he had taken it seriously, so he smiled and didn't say anything else. Although Danqing was stubborn and had seen many storms, his mind was still clear. Unfortunately, Jiang Jiwan didn't have that brain. Rong Xiu was in the academy, and she dared to say such things in front of so many people. Elder Shu Feng stroked his beard. I'm afraid Jiang Ziyuan's future days won't be easy. Lin Qifei and Jiang Jiwan were facing each other. Between the two and Rong Xiu was a floating chessboard. The two of them took turns to make their moves. In the beginning, Rong zest, but gradually, she realized that something was wrong with the situation. Every time she took a step, Lin Qifei would quickly follow, and the position of his piece was always accurate. He didn't seem to need any time to react, and his movements were extremely agile. In the beginning, Jiang Jiwan could still deceive herself, comforting herself that it was just the beginning and the game hadn't started yet. Lin Qifei had a lot of room to play, which was why he could play so smoothly. However, as time passed, more and more pieces appeared on the chessboard, and the situation became more and more complicated. Even Jiang Jiwan had to think twice before placing a piece. But Lin Qifei didn't seem to be affected at all, and was still as sharp as before. At this point, Jiang Jiwan finally felt a little powerless. She quickly looked up, but saw that Lin Qifei's expression was as calm as ever. Sensing her gaze, Lin Qifei smiled and nodded at her. Jiang Jiwan gritted her teeth. From her point of view, Lin Qifei's reaction was clearly a provocation. However, no matter how upset she was, she couldn't reverse the current situation. She became more and more anxious, and cold sweat started to form on her forehead. At this time, the onlookers had also noticed that something was wrong. They secretly exchanged meaningful glances with each other. They were all Xian masters, so of course, they could see that something was fishy. Looking at the current situation, it was obvious that Jiang Jiwan was at a disadvantage. I didn't expect Lin Qifei to be so strong. He couldn't have been hiding his strength before, right? I think it's most likely so. You have to know that Jiang Jiwan's ranking on the Azure Cloud roll is much higher than his. But looking at the situation, Lin Qifei is actually half a head above her. If Jiang Jiwan really loses, wouldn't she lose all her face? The strong are respected. If she can't do it, someone will replace her sooner or later. I think, she hasn't put much effort into her cultivation, so it's normal for her to be overtaken. I think so too. Didn't Lin Qifei just say that the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower actually won against her fair and square? That's not what she said before. If you lose, can you announce it to the others with great fanfare? Actually, I felt that something was wrong from the start. Rong Xiu is the holy son of the Yuntian Tower. How noble is his status? How could he casually marry an ordinary girl as his princess consort? Who knows how much of what Jiang Jiwan said is true and how much of it is false? Although the person who spoke had tried to lower his voice, everyone present was not weak, so they could more or less hear it. Including Jiang Jiwan. She felt even more sullen in her heart, but at this time, she couldn't even say a word of rebuttal. Because what they said was the truth. When everyone didn't know the truth, she might still be able to speak ambiguously. But once they understood, she couldn't continue like that. Because when the truth came out, the liar would often be the most embarrassed. Pa! Suddenly, a sound came from the chessboard. Jiang Jiwan came back to her senses and looked over, but was shocked to find that Lin Qifei's move had cut off her path. Lin Qifei said indifferently. Senior sister Jiang Jiwan, you lost. These few casual words were like a heavy stone that ruthlessly smashed into Jiang Ziyuan's heart. Her mind went blank for a moment, and she almost couldn't believe everything in front of her. She was just distracted for a moment. How did it become like this? However, on the chessboard, she was indeed completely cut. She really lost. This realization made Jiang Jiwan's legs go weak, and she almost fell to the ground. The young man who wanted to challenge her before quickly stepped forward to support her. Ziyuan, are you all right? Jiang Jiwan pushed him away, as if she was afraid of being contaminated by something dirty. The young man's expression darkened, and he silently retreated. Lin Qifei raised his eyebrows slightly. Senior sister Jiang Jiwan, it seems that your strength hasn't increased since you returned from the Yuntian Tower. These words were like a slap to Jiang Jiwan's face. She stared at the chessboard, took a deep breath, and suppressed the anger in her heart with great difficulty. I've been neglecting my cultivation recently. Thank you, junior brother Lin, for your correction. After saying that, she turned around and walked in the direction of the elders. Elder Danqing took a step forward with some worry. Ziyuan, Master, I want to take a leave of absence. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1266. Jiang Ziyuan didn't wait for Elder Danqing to finish speaking and spoke first. Junior brother Lin is right. I've been in a bad state recently, so I want to go home for a while and adjust my condition before coming back. Elder Danqing did not expect her to have such a plan and was slightly stunned. Ziyuan, if you have any difficulties, feel free to tell me. If there's anything I can help you with, I'll do my best. Although Jiang Jiwan was a little stubborn, she was still his favorite student for several years, so Elder Danqing did not want to be too harsh on her. In the past few years, he had spent a lot of effort on Jiang Jiwan. He once thought that even if she could not become a top existence like Rong Xiu, she would be better than most people. Seeing her like this, he felt sorry for her. Jiang Jiwan shook her head and forced a smile. Thank you for your kindness, Master. But this time, I've disappointed you. It's all my fault. But don't worry, I'll come back as soon as possible after going home to adjust. Seeing that she had made up her mind, Elder Danqing knew that it was useless to persuade her anymore, so he could only nod and agree. All right. Whenever you want to come back, I'll be waiting for you. Today, she had made a serious slip of the tongue in front of everyone and lost to Lin Qifei. It would be good for her to leave for a while. It would not be too late for her to come back after the storm subsided. Jiang Jiwan smiled gratefully. Thank you, Master. That student will take her leave today. Elder Danqing sighed inwardly and nodded. Only then did Jiang Jiwan turn around and leave. Everyone looked at each other. She's leaving just like that? The class isn't over yet, she already lost to Lin Qifei in the competition, so why would she care about class? If I were her, I would leave too. Could it be that she can't afford to lose? It's good to have a background. She can leave and come back whenever she wants. She can do whatever she wants. Some very unpleasant words entered Jiang Jiwan's ears. She clenched her fists tightly in her sleeves and tried hard to control her expression. She stopped in front of Lin Qifei. Lin Qifei seemed to sense something and looked up. Jiang Ziyuan suddenly smiled, but the corners of her eyes and the tips of her eyebrows were still cold. Junior brother Lin, I didn't expect you to be so protective of her. You're even willing to stand up for her. If she knew about this, she would definitely be very touched, right? Her tone was very sincere, as if she was really just praising Lin Qifei. However, if one thought about it for a moment, one would feel that something was wrong. There seemed to be some ambiguity in his words. Lin Qifei's eyelids were slightly raised. In his clear pupils, there was a hint of a mocking smile. Cave Heaven Cliff is one of the 28 divisions of the Yuntian Tower. It is our duty to protect the princess. I wonder how Senior Marshal Brother Rong Xiu would react if he knew what Senior Marshal Sister Jiang Jiwan did today. Jiang Jiwan's expression changed. You. This is Lingxiao College, not the Immortal Water Mausoleum. Senior Marshal Sister Jiang Jiwan, you should be more careful with your words and actions in the future. Jiang Jiwan was so angry that she laughed. All right. Junior brother Lin, I'll come back another day to challenge you. After saying that, she lifted her feet and left quickly. She couldn't do anything to Lin Qifei in the school, but once she left, Cave Heaven Cliff would be at the mercy of the Immortal Water Mausoleum. When she returned, she would definitely teach them a lesson. After Jiang Jiwan left, the crowd fell silent for a while, then quickly returned to normal. One Jiang Jiwan was not enough for them to waste so much time and energy. The students of Lingxiao College all understood that no matter what, being strong was the most important thing. The sparring matches between the people continued. However, this time, there were clearly fewer people who wanted to challenge Lin Qifei. They had thought that he was a newcomer, but who knew that he was actually a hidden talent? Now, whoever wanted to challenge him would have to think twice about it. After some hesitation, the person who fought Lin Qifei in the end was Luo Yanming. Unsurprisingly, Luo Yanming was also defeated after a bitter battle. At this time, everyone realized that Lin Qifei's talent was even stronger than they had expected. Elder Huafeng couldn't help but smack his lips. This Lin Qifei wasn't very conspicuous before, but I didn't expect him to be so outstanding. Xu Feng, you've made a fortune this time. Elder Xu Feng was also very happy. He smiled so much that the wrinkles on his face trembled. Hee hee. Of course. Among the new students in the past few months, no one would dare to say that he was the second most talented Xian master among them. The most important thing was that his personality was very calm, so he didn't need to worry about him at all. Elder Huafeng raised his eyebrows. That's not. Before he could finish speaking, he thought for a moment and swallowed the rest of his words. Elder Xu Feng asked. What did you say? Elder Huafeng smiled and shook his head. Nothing. Teach this disciple well. Don't let him go astray. Elder Xu Feng laughed loudly. How can I be so picky? Don't worry. This disciple of mine is very honest and dutiful. Moreover, he has always been very interested in teleportation formations and has been studying this recently. By the way, aren't you very good at this too? When you have time, why don't you give him some pointers? Elder Huafeng laughed heartily and naturally agreed. In the Beast Park. Night fell. The wind and clouds surged between heaven and earth. Elder Yu Yu stood in mid-air and stared at the mountain peak below, waiting to make a move at any time. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1267. Suddenly, a sharp and painful cry resounded through the forest. Elder Yu Yu looked over and vaguely saw a steelback beast cub at the foot of the mountain. It was running back, stumbling along the way. He recognized at a glance that this was the baby steel spine beast that had just been born not long ago. It seemed to be injured as it limped while running. A line of blood vaguely appeared behind it. Elder Yu Yu went closer and took a closer look. He saw that there was a bloody hole in one of the baby's hind legs. It looked like some ferocious beast had forcefully bitten off a large piece of flesh. The white bones could almost be seen. Elder Yu Yu was shocked. The steel spine beast had rough skin and thick flesh. Among the magical beasts in the Beast Park, its physical strength could definitely be ranked in the top 3. To be able to injure it to such an extent, it was definitely not an ordinary magical beast. From the looks of it, it was most likely, but these magical beasts usually stayed out of each other's way. Why would they suddenly start fighting? Needless to say, this was still a baby. Injuring it would undoubtedly offend the adult steel spine beast. This time, it would probably be a fight to the death. Just as Elder Yu Yu was thinking about these questions, the baby steel spine beast had already started running up the mountain peak. As it ran, it constantly let out sorrowful cries for help. Qiong, who was in charge of guarding the entrance of the cave, heard this familiar sound and immediately looked down the mountain. Their night vision was extremely strong. Even though the sky was already dark, Qiong was still able to see the scene below very quickly. A strong smell of blood assaulted them. Qiong's expression changed. Only then did she see the wound on her baby's leg. Swoosh! The steel needles on its back instantly stood up. A trace of biting cold murderous intent flashed across its eyes. Roar! It angrily raised its head and let out an angry roar. This roar was vigorous and powerful, and it instantly spread mightily through the forest. All the magical beasts knew that this was a warning. Hearing its mother's voice, the baby steel spine beast felt much more at ease. But very quickly, it was shocked to discover that the magical beast chasing after it did not stop. In fact, its speed seemed to be even faster. Swoosh! The one behind suddenly pounced. The cub hurriedly dodged and almost stumbled to the ground. During this process, its body fell onto a broken piece of wood, and a thick branch that stretched out diagonally stabbed into its wound. Roar! The steelback beast cub let out a pained hiss. But at this moment, it couldn't care less. It struggled to get up and continue to run up the mountain. Go home. As long as he returned to his mother's side, he would be safe. With that thought in mind, it ran back with all its might. Ah Cheong saw all of this. There seemed to be 2 balls of fire burning in its eyes, as if it wanted to burn everything in front of it to ashes. It lifted its foot and was about to rush over when it suddenly remembered that Chu Luiyue was still cultivating in the cave behind it, preparing to break through. If it left now, Chu Luiyue would be completely exposed to danger. It knew all too well what kind of trouble a human would attract when he broke through in the Beast Park. Ah Cheong was struggling in her heart. In front of him was his only bloodline, and behind him was his savior. It was almost unable to make a decision. Roar! At the foot of the mountain, another cry of pain was heard. It was just that this voice was clearly much weaker than it had been at the beginning. It didn't need to look to know that its child was definitely in danger now. Its innate maternal instinct made it want to abandon everything in front of it and rush over immediately. But a trace of obsession in the depths of its heart nailed it to the ground. Finally, it lifted its leg and stomped down heavily. Boom! With this stomp, almost half of the mountain began to shake and shake. Cracks began to spread from its feet to the ground. The terrifying pressure was like a gust of wind, surging towards the ground. Before Chu Luiyue broke through, it couldn't leave this place. Normally, each family of magical beasts occupied their own territory and didn't interfere with each other. Once there was any action that crossed the boundary, they would receive warnings and threats. Most of the time, such warnings were effective. This was because in the Beast Park, there was not a single magical beast that could dominate the entire Beast Park. Everyone kept each other in check, forming a subtle balance. But now, this balance was broken. The other party had ignored Acheong's repeated warnings and was going to continue attacking no matter what. Other than accepting the challenge, there was no other way. But Acheong couldn't leave at all, so how could it fight? Its cub's cries gradually weakened. Cheong looked down and could clearly see that its speed had slowed down a lot, and its body was already dripping with blood. Obviously, it couldn't hold on for much longer. There seemed to be a fire burning in its heart, and a trace of blood appeared in its eyes. Roar! This cry was sorrowful and almost crazy. But it still guarded the entrance of the cave and didn't move an inch. How could this be? Not far away, Elder Yu saw this scene and was shocked. What was that adult steel spine beast thinking? The one at the foot of the mountain that was on the verge of death was its cub. At this time, shouldn't it immediately rush over and protect it with all its might? Why was it still guarding the entrance of the cave without moving until now? Was the one in the cave really Chu Yu? Elder Yu couldn't understand. Could it be that to it, Chu Yu was more important than its bloodline? If he didn't see it with his own eyes, he wouldn't dare to believe that such a thing would happen. If this matter were to spread, others would probably think that he was joking. He frowned and suddenly thought of the rumors related to Chu Yu. Each and every one of them was unbelievable. Originally, he didn't take Chu Yu too seriously and only thought that he was a young boy who loved to play around. No matter what, he was just a little more talented and lucky. But now he realized that he was wrong. To be able to make an adult steel spine beast willingly give up its bloodline, what exactly did Chu Yu do in the Beast Park these few days? Actually, Chu Luiyue didn't do anything. She was just cultivating and planning to break through to rank 8 warrior. A few days had passed, and she maintained the same posture. While devouring the surrounding energy of heaven and earth, she completely merged the power stored in the water droplet with herself. Even she was shocked by the formation needed for this breakthrough. Because this had long surpassed the scale of her breakthrough to rank 8 warrior in her previous life. But from the beginning to the end, she had done her best. Vaguely, she felt an invisible barrier. In her heart, she was certain that was the threshold of rank 8 warrior. She held her breath, gathered her strength, and charged toward the barrier. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1268. Rumble. A huge energy wave suddenly came out from the cave. Elder Yu Yu's heart skipped a beat. This commotion, was Chu Yu really just breaking through to the 8th stage? He had cultivated for many years and had seen many cultivators trying to break through this threshold. There was no lack of outstanding geniuses among them. However, he had never seen anyone who could cause such a huge wave. Even when some cultivators broke through to the 9th stage, there wouldn't be such a huge commotion. Elder Yu Yu clenched his fists tightly and had the urge to scold someone. Before coming in, he had clearly told Chu Yu to honestly tell him his strength. At that time, he thought that he had already said it, but he didn't expect that there was still something hidden. When this matter was over, he would definitely teach Chu Yu a lesson. Roar! A loud and excited roar suddenly came from another mountain peak not far away. This sound was like a mysterious mechanism had been opened in an instant. That unknown and terrifying flood had already poured down before anyone could react. Screech dash, in another direction, another sharp screech rang out. Following that, all kinds of sounds came from all directions. Those magical beasts that had quietly arrived and had been waiting quietly finally couldn't hold back and bared their fangs. The roars that rose and fell were filled with endless greed and lust. Although the killing had yet to truly begin, the air was already filled with a thick smell of blood. Elder Yu Yu's back suddenly broke out in cold sweat. The number of magical beasts that had been lured over this time was much more than what he had expected. Under the gloomy sky, figures filled with murderous intent walked out from the lofty mountains and lofty ridges, heading towards the mountain peak in the middle. Elder Yu Yu lowered his head to take a look and his scalp went numb. There were simply too many of them. The commotion caused by Chu Yu's breakthrough was too big. Other than the magical beasts nearby, even some of the magical beasts in the distance sensed the commotion and rushed over. If he didn't think of a way to solve it in time, the number of magical beasts that gathered here would only increase. Elder Yu Yu's body tensed up as his mind raced, hoping to find a solution as soon as possible. But how could it be so easy? Now, generally speaking, there were only two directions. One of them forcefully interrupted Chu Yu's breakthrough and quickly brought him away from this place. The other was to drive away all these magical beasts and save Chu Yu from danger. But no matter which one it was, it sounded impossible. When a cultivator wanted to break through, they needed an absolutely stable environment. Any interference could cause him to fail. In the worst-case scenario, it could cause him to never be able to cross this shackle again. If he did this, what if he ruined Chu Yu? Not to mention, Chu Yu still had an adult steel spine beast guarding him. A steel spine beast that was willing to give up its own cubs in order to protect him. Once it sensed that someone was approaching, what kind of power would it erupt with? Just thinking about it was frightening. As for the second method, Elder Yu Yu admitted that he didn't have this ability. Even if he had been patrolling this area all year round, he would definitely not be a match for so many magical beasts. In a moment of desperation, Elder Yu Yu finally took out his green jade token and sent out a distress signal. Chu Yu is in danger, help him. It was already night time. Elder Bo Yen and the others arrived at Thousand Wine Mountain and planned to continue repairing it. But just as he stood still, he suddenly sensed something and his expression changed. Elder Ouyang and Elder Bo Yen looked at him strangely and asked, "What's wrong?" Elder Bo Yen didn't say anything and directly took out his green jade token. A line of words slowly appeared. Elder Bo Yan's pupils shrank. Sensing the change in his aura, Elder Ouyang and Elder Bo Yen looked at each other and felt uneasy. "I have something to do, I have to leave first." Elder Bo Yen hurriedly said and was about to turn and leave. "Hey, what's going on?" Elder Ouyang couldn't help but ask. They rarely saw such an expression on Elder Bo Yan's face. Elder Bo Yen paused and said, there's a problem at the Beast Park. I'll go take a look first. Beast Park? Doesn't that mean that something happened to Chuyu? But you and the others have been. Before Elder Ouyang could finish his sentence, he suddenly fell silent. This news obviously came from those few people. It could be seen that the matter was no longer within their control. Let's go together. Shang Yusin made a prompt decision. Elder Bo Yen shook his head. You guys can continue to stay here. After all, there's a great Xian formation at the Beast Park. You and the others are also there. Nothing should happen for a while. However, if you guys follow me, you'll be too big of a target and attract too much attention. Only a few of them knew that Chuyu was locked up in the Beast Park. If this news spread, their previous efforts would be wasted. Elder Ouyang and Elder Bo Yen looked at each other and could only agree. If there's any problem, we'll rush over immediately. Elder Bo Yen nodded. With a tap of his foot, he quickly left. Splash, the sound of water suddenly came from the mouth of the spring. Elder Ouyang instantly became alert. What's the situation? Shang Yusin quickly went forward and carefully checked the surroundings. He heaved a sigh of relief. Nothing. It seems like a stone at the side fell into the spring. Elder Ouyang was skeptical and went over to take a look personally. He was only relieved after that. It's good that nothing happened. We've already reached such a critical juncture. We can't afford to make any more mistakes. At the same time, Elder Wanzheng, who was arranging the medicinal herbs in his residence, also received Elder Yuyu's message. When he saw the line of words on the green jade token, he was so shocked that he stood up abruptly and flipped the table over. The dozens of precious medicinal herbs that were neatly arranged on the table all fell to the ground and mixed together. However, Elder Wanzheng couldn't care less about this. He took off and left, should have stayed there and not left. In the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared into the night outside the door. Boom! Another wave of energy spread out from the cave. At this moment, the Xian formation barrier in the sky suddenly flickered. Elder Yu quickly flew up, and with a wave of his sleeve, an opening appeared on the profound formation. A figure quickly rushed in. It was Elder Bo Yen. How's Chuyu? Elder Bo Yen couldn't wait to ask Elder Yu when he saw him. Elder Yu didn't have time to answer before he saw another person flying over. Disciple. Disciple. Elder Wanzheng shouted anxiously. After entering, he saw Elder Yu and immediately went forward and grabbed his wrist. Where's my disciple? How is he now? Elder Yu swallowed his saliva with difficulty and pointed downwards. There, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1269. Elder Wanzheng and Elder Wanzheng looked in the direction of his finger, and both of them were speechless. Amidst the rolling mountain range, a towering mountain peak could be seen. It was no different from the other mountains, but at this moment, it had become the sole focus of attention. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, forming a huge vortex that was almost connected to the mountain peak. Wind and thunder roared, as if the mountain would be destroyed at any moment. Below, the surroundings of the mountain peak were already surrounded by numerous magical beasts. Some were crawling beside the rocks, some were standing on the branches, and some were hiding in the ravines. In short, all kinds of magical beasts had gathered from all directions. At first glance, the lowest level rank, 9, was at the outermost periphery, while the innermost circle was actually filled with divine beasts. The pressure of one divine beast was already very shocking, let alone when so many of them gathered together. Cold and greedy killing intent flashed in the countless pairs of cold and ruthless eyes that were looking at the mountain in the middle. Space seemed to have frozen, making people's hair stand on end. Just looking at it from afar was enough to suffocate people. Elder Wanzheng and Elder Wanzheng were stunned on the spot. They never thought that they would see such a scene after coming here. This, Elder Wanzheng opened his mouth, his lips pale. Where is Chuyu? Elder Yu swallowed his saliva with difficulty. He's in a cave on that mountain. Actually, anyone who saw this scene could easily guess Chu Yu's position. Not to mention these two experienced and knowledgeable elders. He just didn't want to believe it. Because this was too frightening and worrisome. Why is he there? No, that's not right. Is he okay now? Elder Wanzheng unconsciously tightened his grip on Elder Yu's wrist. The latter knew that he was worried and hurriedly explained. Don't worry, he's still fine. However, Elder Wanzheng was still unable to calm down. Even if everything was fine now, who could guarantee what would happen in the next moment? Elder Bo Yen was relatively calmer. After looking around carefully, a trace of suspicion flashed across his eyes. Is Chu Yu preparing to break through? This was basically the only answer that could cause such a situation. Elder Yu nodded. But isn't he only at the middle of the 7th rank? Even if he wants to break through, he shouldn't have caused such a huge commotion. He's not trying to break through to the peak of the 7th step. Elder Yu took a deep breath. He's trying to break through to the 8th step in one go. Elder Wanzheng subconsciously looked at him and frowned. How is this possible? Elder Yu didn't say anything and just looked at him helplessly. Why would he need to lie about something like this? Yu is right. This is indeed not the energy of heaven and earth that can be activated when one is preparing to break through to the peak of the 7th step. I even feel that this should only happen when one is breaking through to the 9th step. Elder Bo Yan's gaze swept across the many magical beasts below, and he felt rather regretful. I can only blame myself for not making things clear to that child back then. Now that things have turned out like this, Elder Wanzheng rubbed his face hard. No, it's my dereliction of duty as a master. That day on the road, he had told Chu Yu many things, but he had missed this. He clearly knew that the child had outstanding talent, but how could he forget the most important point? Elder Bo Yen patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. Wanzheng, things have already turned out like this. Let's not be in a hurry to blame ourselves. It's more important to get Chu Yu out first. After all, Chu Yu had just broken through to the middle of the 7th step not long ago. Who would have thought that he was going to break through again so quickly? And he was going to break through to the 8th step. This series of events had happened too quickly and too suddenly, and they didn't even have time to react. Elder Wanzheng's face was filled with worry. Save? How can we save him now? Usually, these magical beasts were more reasonable, but the current situation was special. They were controlled by impulse and greed, and couldn't listen at all. It was even more impossible to use force. Even if the few of them worked together, they wouldn't be able to defeat these magical beasts. Elder Yu saw that the two of them were filled with worry and added, actually, there's still room to turn things around. Chu Yu isn't alone now. Look at the position halfway up the mountain. The two of them followed his gaze and looked over. That's a steel spine beast? The corner of Elder Wanzheng's eyes twitched. That's right. But that steel spine beast isn't attacking Chu Yu, but to protect him. As soon as he said that, Elder Bo Yen and Elder Wanzheng looked at him with an extremely strange gaze. Elder Yu smiled bitterly. It's true, roar. A roar suddenly came from not far away. Grief and despair. They all looked over, and only then did they see that there were two demonic beasts fighting on top of the mountain. No, to be precise, it should be a one-sided slaughter. The one that was attacking crazily was a golden cloud leopard that was brown all over and had golden spots on its body. On the ground in front of it, there was a steel spine beast that was covered in blood and on the verge of death. More than half of the steel needles on its back were broken, and its body was covered in wounds. There was almost no place that was unscathed. Most of them were caused by the bite of this golden cloud leopard. That's the cub of the steel spine beast. Elder Yu sighed helplessly. In order to protect Chu Yu, its mother chose to stay in the cave and didn't go down to save it. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1270. It sounds unbelievable, right? But it is the truth. I saw it with my own eyes. Of course, all of you have witnessed it now. Elder Yu shook his head. I don't know what Chuyu did to make that adult steel spine beast act like this. It would rather sacrifice its own bloodline to protect him. Elder Bo Yen and Elder Yu were shocked and fell silent. But even with that steel spine beast, he might not be able to hold on for long. Elder Yu looked at the sky. It usually takes a long time to break through to rank 8. I am not sure when Chuyu will be able to break through. But once these magical beasts attack together, I am afraid. Not to mention, Chuyu might fail to break through. That would be even worse. Elder Bo Yen suddenly said, if we can lure the tiger away from the mountain, that won't work. Chuyu was about to break through and countless heaven and earth energy was being mobilized by him. In the eyes of these magical beasts, there was nothing more desirable than this. Elder Yu had been guarding the beast park for many years and was more experienced than the others. If even he said so, it meant that it was really impossible. And under such circumstances, it is basically impossible for us to get close to that mountain and take him away. The adult steel spine beast in front of the cave will obviously fight to the death against the invaders. We are included in that. Also, there are so many magical beasts watching us. If we break in now, not only will it not help the situation, it might even agitate them and force them to attack. This won't work, that won't work. Then what should we do? Elder Wanjing couldn't help but shout at Elder Bo Yen. Look! I told you not to send him here. Danger. You didn't listen. Bo Yen, if anything happens to my disciple, I will not let you off. Facing Elder Wanjing's anger, Elder Bo Yen didn't get angry. This is Lingxiao College. The dean isn't here, so I am in charge. With me here, I will not let anything happen to Chuyu. His sonorous tone gradually calmed Elder Wanjing down. He closed his eyes. Bo Yen, I am sorry. I lost my composure just now, let's not talk about this now. The most important thing is to think of a way to bring him out, rumble. Another shocking energy ripple came from the cave. Elder Bo Yen clenched his fists and hesitated for a long time. Let's wait for him to break through first. Halfway up the mountain, the golden cloud leopard coldly stared at the steel spine beast cub in front of it. The thick smell of blood permeated the air. It was a divine beast. Dealing with a 9th grade cub like this was a piece of cake. Moreover, the only adult steel spine beast that could protect it had been guarding the mountain all this time and had not come down. The golden cloud leopard looked up and licked its paws as if provoking Lin Fan. Of course, Ah Cheong could see all of this clearly. Its eyes were scarlet red, filled with frenzied anger and hatred. There was no doubt that once it had the chance, it would kill the golden cloud leopard below. However, it did not move. It was like a city wall, firmly blocking the entrance of the cave, carefully protecting Chu Luiyue inside. Only that pair of eyes stared at the golden cloud leopard's every move. It remembered every single wound that the other party had left on its child's body. As long as Chu Luiyue broke through, it would repay this pain 1,000 times over on the golden cloud leopard. Seeing the hatred in Ah Cheong's eyes, a hint of satisfaction appeared in the golden cloud leopard's eyes. It wanted the other party to feel this pain. It wanted it to see its cub being killed with its own eyes. It was extremely difficult for steel spine beasts to have children. Some would only give birth to one cub in their entire life. This caused them to dote on and value their children very much. Some steel spine beasts would even die of depression after losing their children. This one was probably no exception. Thinking of this, the golden cloud leopard became even more arrogant and proud. It tilted its head and looked at the steel spine beast cub lying on the ground, almost dead. At this moment, the steel spine beast cub was already numb from the pain. It did not even have the strength to stand up. It tried its best. The only thing it could do was to turn its head with difficulty and look halfway up the mountain. Mother and cub looked at each other from afar. Its eyes were filled with longing, desire, and despair. It seemed to want to shout again, but its throat could no longer make a sound. It could only pant like a broken bellows. After several failed attempts, it finally gave up and slowly closed its eyes. 2 streams of tears fell from the steel-spine beast cub's eyes. The golden cloud leopard jumped onto its body, opened its bloody mouth, and bit towards the steel-spine beast cub's throat. It would definitely die with this bite. Cheong trembled violently and subconsciously wanted to close its eyes. But it did not. It wanted to see clearly how the other party killed its cub. It endured silently, but 2 streams of blood tears rolled down. The golden cloud leopard's sharp fangs flickered with a cold light. It lowered its head and bit. Swoosh! An extremely sharp sound of something tearing through the air rang out. The golden cloud leopard was shocked and immediately dodged to the side. However, it was fast, but that cold wind was faster. It had not even completely jumped away from the steel-spine beast cub when the space between its eyebrows was suddenly pierced from behind by a sharp sword. However, this was not the end. The sword actually brought it out and nailed it to the ground. Blood splattered everywhere. Its body stiffened, its eyeballs popped out, and half of its head was deformed. It was miserable and terrifying. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1271. This sudden sword strike shocked everyone on the spot. The surroundings of the mountain fell into a strange silence. However, Cheong reacted instantly and looked back excitedly. A slender figure was walking out of the deep and serene cave. It was Chu Luiyue. She walked over step by step, landing silently, her movements comfortable and natural. Her every move seemed to be filled with an indescribable elegance and freedom. Even the wind seemed to be especially gentle when it passed by her. The sky was very dark at the moment, but when she appeared, the surroundings seemed to light up in an instant. She looked the same as before, but vaguely, there seemed to be something different. That was a change that would only occur after she became stronger. Cheong, what are you spacing out for? Hurry up and bring it back. Chu Luiyue stood still and smiled at Cheong. Cheong suddenly came back to her senses, nodded vigorously, and ran down. Bang! Bang! Its body was extremely large. When it ran down the mountain, it looked like it wanted to trample the entire mountain. But it was extremely fast, and the distance wasn't very far to begin with. It arrived in the blink of an eye. It carefully lowered its head and cautiously and lovingly nudged the head of the steel-spine beast cub lying on the ground. A sparkling radiance appeared on its silver horn. It moved closer and touched the cub's horn with its horn. A warm and majestic power instantly flowed into the cub's body. The steel-spine beast cub that had been despairing and waiting for death didn't wait for that fatal blow. Instead, it felt a familiar presence. It slowly opened its eyes and saw its mother whom it was most familiar with. It stared blankly, as if it didn't understand what had happened. Cheong carefully carried it and walked back step by step. With the support of its power, the dying steel-spine beast cub recovered a portion of its strength. It only vaguely understood what had happened when it was placed in front of its own cave again. Its injuries are quite serious. I'll give it some medicine first to stabilize its situation. Later, I'll treat it carefully and nurse it back to health. As Chu Luiyue spoke, he took out a bottle, poured out 5 pills, and fed them to the steelback beast cubs. A normal person would only need 1 pill, but the steel-spine beast had a huge body, so 5 pills were more or less enough. The cub didn't struggle and swallowed it obediently. Cheong stuck close to its face. Her eyes were still blood red, but the hatred and despair in them had already disappeared. What replaced it was endless joy and gratitude. The mother and son quietly snuggled together, as if nothing could separate them. Chu Luiyue felt a lump in his throat when he saw this. He solemnly said to Cheong, "Cheong, this time. Thank you. All the emotions, gratitude, shame, comfort, were gathered in these few words. Although Chu Luiyue had been in the cave the whole time and did not see what had happened with her own eyes, she had been paying attention to her surroundings before and after her breakthrough. She could roughly guess what had happened. She never thought that Ah Cheong would be willing to give up her own child for her. This shocked and touched her, but also made her feel guilty. I will help it recuperate. Chu Luiyue paused. Also, next time. Don't do this again. Ah Cheong shook her head. If she had to do it again, she would still make the same choice. For her child, she could give up her own life to avenge it. But she wanted her to live. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be blocked by something, and tears welled up in her eyes. She took a deep breath, and a bright and proud smile bloomed on her lips. I was wrong. There won't be a next time. She would never allow such a thing to happen again. You stay here and guard it. Leave the rest to me. As Chu Luiyue spoke, she stepped forward and raised her hand. Swish. The sword that killed the golden cloud leopard quickly flew back. Sharp, cold, and majestic. It was Scarlet Cloud's sword. Chu Luiyue held the sword hilt tightly. It was slightly cold to the touch, and the eyes of the dragon head on the hilt flickered with a cold luster. However, Chu Luiyue's heart was burning with passion. Even though Chu Luiyue had already predicted that Qi Shao's sword's prowess would be many times stronger than all the Yuan instruments she had before, its frightening destructive power still shocked Chu Luiyue when it was truly used. When Chu Luiyue threw out the sword, she actually didn't inject any force into it. She even casually threw out the sword due to the urgent situation back then and controlled it to kill the golden cloud leopard with her thoughts. In the end, it killed it with one blow. One had to know that the golden cloud leopard was a real divine beast. From this, one could see the power of Scarlet Cloud's sword. A venerable artifact. It was indeed worthy of its reputation. Chu Luiyue lowered her gaze to take a look. After killing a divine beast, Scarlet Cloud's sword was still bright and clean, without a trace of blood. The surroundings were completely silent. The roars of various magical beasts that were previously filled with all kinds of roars came to an abrupt end the moment the golden cloud leopard was killed. Among those present, the lowest level was a 9th grade magical beast. Of course, they were not stupid. At the very least, after witnessing the scene just now, they would not treat Chu Luiyue as a piece of meat that could be slaughtered on a chopping board. Chu Luiyue looked up, and her cold eyes swept across the surrounding magical beasts one by one. Her red lips curled into a cold smile. Who's next? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1272. It was still dead silent. Only the night breeze blew through the mountains, causing her clothes to flutter. The young man standing on the mountain had a slender figure, but at this moment, he straightened his back and confronted the beasts. Most importantly, he didn't lose in terms of aura. Elder Yu Yu and the other two were standing in the air. When they saw this scene, they were all stunned on the spot. Their expressions turned sluggish for an instant. Is this really my disciple, Chu Yu? Elder Wanjing felt his throat dry up as he stuttered out the question. As soon as he said this, he wanted to give himself a slap. What kind of nonsense was this? If that wasn't his precious disciple, who else could it be? Look at that face. Look at that figure. Look at that imposing aura. And that Scarlet Cloud sword. Wasn't that the precious disciple that he had been longing for? Rank 8, he really broke through to become a rank 8 warrior. Elder Bo Yen muttered softly, his eyes filled with shock. Breaking through to become a rank 8 warrior was definitely not that simple. Many cultivators had to start preparing in advance in order to cross this threshold and used almost all their means. However, those who could successfully break through were few and far between. The most important thing was that the more talented a cultivator was, the more difficulties and troubles they would face when breaking through this hurdle. This was because after becoming a rank 7 warrior, every step they took would greatly affect their future development. Every step they took was as if they were treading on thin ice, and they couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Chuyu definitely had outstanding talent in this aspect. However, he actually broke through so casually on a broken mountain in the Beast Park. He could still clearly remember the shocking phenomenon in the sky and the terrifying commotion that came from the cave when they had just rushed over. This proved Chuyu's talent as a warrior, but it also made them more worried. Elder Bo Yen was almost certain that Chuyu wouldn't succeed. However, it had only been a short while, and he actually succeeded. Chuyu even killed a mythical beast with a single slash. If it was someone else, even if they broke through to rank 9, they might not be able to do it, let alone rank 8. Comparatively speaking, Elder Yu was the calmest of the three. He had been here the whole time and had almost witnessed the whole thing, so he was already mentally prepared. Of course, his ability to accept it was much higher than the other two. He took a deep breath and comforted her. Bo Yen, Wanzheng, you can relax a little. Normally speaking, this is the most dangerous time. The origin power around a cultivator who has just broken through has a fatal attraction to these magical beasts. Under normal circumstances, they would have attacked by now. However, because Chuyu had taken the lead and killed a golden cloud leopard, they were rather wary of him. If they choose to retreat after some consideration, then this matter will be completely resolved. Elder Yuyu's words lifted the spirits of Elder Wanzheng and Elder Wanzheng. If that was the case, then it would be for the best. If the two sides fought, both sides would definitely be injured. If these magical beasts were smart enough and tactful enough to choose to give up on attacking, it would undoubtedly save everyone a lot of trouble. Now is a critical moment in the confrontation between the two sides. Once these magical beasts saw that Chuyu had the slightest bit of cowardice and fear, they would definitely attack. Whether they succeed or not depends on Chuyu. Elder Yu said in a low voice. In the deathly silent confrontation, no magical beasts stepped forward. However, they didn't back off at all and just stared at Chu Luiyue with their greedy and ruthless eyes. Of course, at this moment, there was a hint of wariness in their eyes. Before this, they had only sensed a great temptation, so they had gathered over without caring about anything else. But now, they all realized that behind this temptation was great danger. That insolent golden cloud leopard was a precedent. Those who want to fight, just come forward. Those who want to give up, step back. Chu Luiyue was a little impatient and raised her voice. I will count to 3. Those who do not move will also be considered as fighting. Saying so, she raised her other hand and stretched out a slender white finger. 1. A small group of magical beasts started to become restless. 2. The magical beasts standing in the innermost circle also started to look at each other, obviously trying to find out what the other was thinking. And some of the 9th grade magical beasts in the outer circle had already started to retreat. That human who had just broken through was indeed very tempting, but before they wanted anything, they had to ensure that they could stay alive to enjoy it. In any case, there was a group of divine beasts in front, and they would not get anything in the end, so they might as well leave. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and shouted one last time. 3. This time, about half of the magical beasts standing in the middle of the circle also started to retreat. And the divine beasts in the innermost circle still did not move. Oh, that was not it either. One of them took a step forward. It was a wolf. Its fur was black and shiny, but there was a smear of gold on its forehead, and a pair of wings on its back. Its eyes were very special. There were no pupils, only the whites of its eyes, and they emitted a white light. At first glance, it looked very strange. A golden black demon wolf? Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. This was also a divine beast, and its explosive power and combat strength were extremely strong, even stronger than the golden cloud leopard. Of course, if it did not have the strength, it would not have dared to take this step. Hearing her words, the golden black demon wolf lowered its body slightly, revealing its sharp teeth, and let out a low growl from its throat. This was a sign that it was preparing to attack. Chu Luyue laughed. Good, looks like you want to fight with me. As she spoke, she turned her gaze and looked at the other magical beasts around her. After a moment, she retracted her gaze. With a flick of her wrist, the light as a feather scarlet heaven's sword drew a beautiful arc in the air and pointed at the golden black demon wolf from afar. Come. As soon as she finished speaking, Chu Luyue pushed off with the tip of her foot and soared into the air. At the same time, the golden black demon wolf also flapped its wings and rose into the air. It went straight for Chu Luyue. When the three elders who were watching from afar saw this, a trace of worry flashed across their faces. Golden black demon wolf? This is one of the strongest magical beasts in the beast park, and it is cunning and extremely difficult to deal with. Can Chu Yu do it alone? Elder Wanzheng could not help but ask. Elder Yu laughed bitterly. This is really hard to say. Chu Yu being able to kill the golden cloud leopard with one strike was already quite unexpected. To be honest, I feel that her current strength should be much stronger than the average beginner level 8th stage. So this victory is really hard to say. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1273. Of course, he hoped that Chu Yu could win. With the death of the golden cloud leopard, he was certain that Chu Yu could defeat 1/5 of the divine beasts here with his current strength. Although the golden cloud leopard was considered quite powerful here, it had been fighting with the steel spine beast for a long time and its combat power must have been reduced. Therefore, Elder Yu naturally lowered the ratio. But even if it was only 1/5, it was already very outstanding. The stage 9 warriors in the academy might not even be able to defeat one of the divine beasts here. Even if most of the credit went to the Scarlet Heaven Sword, it was Chu Yu's, so of course, it was also a part of her strength. He paused and lowered his voice. This golden black fiend wolf has a high status in the beast park. If Chu Yu can defeat it this time, he will definitely be able to force the other beasts to retreat. In mid-air, Chu Luyue and the golden black fiend wolf faced each other. Chu Luyue sized it up and shook her head. TSK, what a pity. A trace of confusion flashed across the golden black fiend wolf's eyes. It obviously did not understand where Chu Luyue's words came from. Chu Luyue smiled. I wanted to help you find a master, but based on your temperament, I don't think you will submit to anyone. The golden black fiend wolf's fur instantly stood up. Its murderous aura was awe-inspiring. Obviously, Chu Luyue's words offended it. Chu Luyue held the Scarlet Heaven sword tightly and brandished it. There was one more thing she did not say. She had already decided to use it as an example, so it had to die. A woo! The golden black fiend wolf raised its head and howled. In the next moment, it moved and quickly flew toward Chu Luyue. With a flap of its wings, it suddenly split into two. It flanked Chu Luyue from both sides. Elder Yu frowned. The golden black fiend wolf is extremely fast, and it has a clone that is almost as powerful as the real body. We have to kill both the real body and the clone to truly kill it. Otherwise, as long as it has a breath left, it can come back again. I wonder if Chu Yu will be able to handle it this time. Elder Bo Yen suddenly said. Doesn't he have a contracted divine beast? Why hasn't he summoned it yet? If the man and the beast join forces now, they might have a chance of winning. Elder Wanzheng was so nervous that he couldn't even speak. He clenched his fists and his palms were sweaty. Elder Yu knew that he was worried. After thinking for a moment, he advised, actually, if Chu Yu really can't handle it, we can find an opportunity. Chi. Two short sounds of sharp weapons piercing flesh rang out almost at the same time. Elder Yu's throat seemed to have been strangled by someone, forcing him to swallow the rest of his words. He widened his eyes in shock, not knowing what to say for a moment. Because, in the air not far in front of them, the golden black demon wolf's true body and doppelganger were both pierced through. It hit the center of the eyebrows, a fatal blow. He didn't even have time to cry for help before he died. The one on the left was Scarlet Heaven's sword. As for the right, when Elder Yu saw it clearly, he couldn't help but gasp. It was actually a scabbard. The scabbard looked ordinary, and its entire body was round and blunt. Logically speaking, it shouldn't have been able to pierce through a golden black demon wolf's flesh. But the truth was right in front of them. From the beginning to the end of this battle, Chu Yu still only used one strike. Chu Luiyue raised her hand and called Scarlet Heaven's sword back. The moment the sword and scabbard were pulled out, the figure on the left disappeared instantly. The one on the right quickly fell down. A moment later, a muffled sound came from below. Clang! Scarlet Heaven's sword returned to its scabbard. What made Chu Luiyue satisfied was that not only Scarlet Heaven's sword's body, but its scabbard also didn't have a single trace of blood on it. Other than an extremely faint smell of blood, it didn't look like she had just killed a divine beast. Her movements were smooth and her mood was relaxed. However, the other demonic beasts present, and even the three elders, were all in disarray. What's going on? A scabbard can also kill? And it's the real body. They didn't even see clearly when the scabbard appeared, and in the next second, it directly exploded the golden black demon wolf's head. Chu Yu's move, isn't it a little too abnormal? Countless gazes fell on Chu Luiyue. She calmly adjusted her breath, then looked down and raised the corner of her lips. Anything else? In fact, her current state wasn't as good as it looked. Because using Scarlet Heaven's sword twice had taken a huge toll on her. The first time, it wasn't obvious. At that time, she had just broken through, and coincidentally, the steelback beast's cub was in danger. She was highly focused and didn't pay attention to anything else. But this time, she clearly felt that after she used the sword, a considerable portion of her strength and spirit had been consumed. If a person wanted to maintain the best battle state, it didn't only depend on the amount of force in the body, but also on spirit, willpower, and many other aspects. Just like now, Chu Luiyue actually didn't inject any force into Scarlet Heaven's sword twice, and it was very light when she picked it up and put it down. But the price of using it wasn't small. After a short silence, some of the magical beasts began to retreat. And the divine beasts in the innermost area seemed to be wavering. Chu Luiyue raised her sword and pointed downward. But before she could say anything, a familiar voice sounded in her ears. Chu Yu, wait. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.